Councilmember Vinker. Here. Chair Tanaka.
Here.
Councilmember Lowing. For the record, all present.
Okay, so today is Tuesday, October 10th. On the agenda is public comments. Does the clerk, are there any public comments?
We have no requests to speak and no hands are raised.
No public comments?
That is correct. No
Okay.
public comments.
Okay, great. And I'll just ask to have my colleagues turn the camera on because our auditor is remote. So if you do that, that'd be awesome. Okay, and the first action item is approval of proposed changes to the fraud, waste, and
Did you
abuse
call
hotline.
roll?
Oh, yeah, we did actually.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Fraud, waste, and abuse hotline administration policy, not a sequel product. The staff have a presentation that they'd like to review.
If the clerk could display the document. Thank you.
Adrian, I think we're ready for you.
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I have three proposed updates to the fraud, waste, and abuse administration policy. If you can, just one point to bring up is that we're also suggesting adding a header, page numbers, and just a revision date. That's what you see in red line at the top of the pages. So if we can move to section number 3. Yes. The first recommendation pertains to situations wherein a complaint is made against the 3 members of the committee that should be reviewing and determining the disposition of the allegation. In that instance, we wanted to update the individuals or the roles of individuals who will be replacing that committee member that has an allegation that has been made against them. And the reason for that is to ensure that there is no perceived or actual conflict of interest with the disposition of the case, whereby a staff member would be having to render an opinion or give direction on something that pertains to the person they report to. So that language has been redlined with an update for suggestions.
To make this meeting efficient, as the auditor goes through some of these proposed red lines, feel free to ask questions or make comments so that we could try to keep the thread together.
So with that invitation, I wanted to ask about this, the way it's written. First of all, I do concur that, we should have these alternates. But it says the director of HR or chief assistant city attorney or an outside attorney, then just says as appropriate under the circumstances. And I'd like to see that be more specific. If we're, truly concerned about this, and not just, in actuality, but the optics, it seems to me that the city manager and city attorney are a little differently situated. The city manager, everyone reports to the city manager, so it seems to me that should be an outside attorney, or maybe not an attorney or retired city manager, but someone outside of the city. And if it's a city attorney, then I think I'd also go outside of the city, simply because I'd like it to be someone that doesn't report to him or her. and is an attorney, so that to the extent there's a need for legal proficiency, that it's there. So my thought would be for the city manager would be an outside attorney or whomever. And I'd ask our city manager what he thinks about attorney or retired city manager. But I feel like they're a little differently situated, and I'd like to see some more direction or to understand better why it wasn't in your proposed language. Thank you.
Well, actually, since the example was the city manager, perhaps I could take the first crack at a response. I think it's notable to put the role of the committee in the context of the initial intake. And that's really the role that this committee plays. It's distinct from the actual investigations that would occur, let's say, if, or as typically occurs in order to actually follow up on an investigation. That's the reason having individuals who are simply not directly alleged to be involved allows the committee to act quickly and then move it toward disposition, such as maybe bringing in someone externally as might be needed. But in any case, that would be my initial comment.
I guess I'd like to add to that couple of pieces. So this initial triage is intended to happen very quickly. So that makes it difficult to bring someone on from the outside for that initial piece. Also, the policy, in my view, initial policy or original policy was drafted somewhat generally for a reason, and that's because it's difficult to anticipate what could happen here, the types of things that can be alleged in a fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. So rather than try to spell out with precision, make a rule that is binding and perhaps not flexible, I think there's a little bit of a need to rely on the skill and goodwill of the three, or at least two of the three on the committee to chart a reasonable course to protect the city and the city council, and in fact, the official who may be alleged to be involved. Yeah.
So if we were to stay internal for a moment, because it's the preliminary nature of this, could you give me some reasoning why we wouldn't want to just say it's the HR director, because the city attorney would still be there? So why we would have the auditor, the city attorney, and an assistant city attorney or an outside attorney?
Oh, what's intended there is that, so the status quo basic situation which obtains is that the committee is the city auditor, the city manager, and the city attorney, and each plays a distinct role based on their professional expertise and knowledge. And so just a little caveat here, I would be very cautious about having an attorney stand in for the manager.
That's my point.
Right. So
I must not have articulated it well the
Yeah.
first time, because the example was not just the city manager. The example was teasing apart the city attorney and the city manager in terms of who stands in.
yes, and the sentence is intended to say that it may be a little awkwardly drafted.
Yeah.
So the HR director is intended to stand in for the city manager, and the chief assistant city attorney or an outside attorney is intended to stand in for the city attorney.
That's what I was trying to suggest. That is not, to me, how this reads.
Okay.
So we should, in any of the places it's iterated. So that was exactly my point. If we stay internal, which I'd like to hear from my colleagues about that for the preliminary nature, I was focused more on who stands in for whom. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I did read this section the way you intended it, but I still had the question, notwithstanding this is the initial look at things, I still had the question of the director of HR reports to the city attorney, the chief assistant attorney reports to the city attorney. So I'm not sure we're making a lot of progress on distancing from someone in one of those two positions that's on review.
Right, so if I could offer, so imagine a couple of scenarios. One in which someone comes forward and makes a complaint about some aspect of an accounting transaction they were involved in that they allege was wasteful or may have involved fraud. And also says, and city management, they hire too many high-paid people, they're wasteful, right? The city manager and the city attorney have too many staff. Okay, make some very general allegation. In that case, do you want to go to the time and trouble of hiring outside people for something that is, not central, not specific, or versus a concrete and specific and weighty allegation, in which case I can tell you if it was made against me, I would not want the chief assistant who works with me closely and reports to me to be the person involved. I would want for myself and my office and for you to get an outside person right away.
Yeah, I would think so.
And I imagine the city manager has a similar approach to that. So a little bit need to respond to the circumstances, I think.
Is essentially what I'll call the chair of this committee, the outside auditor, because of the independence there?
It is the auditor, yes.
Right. So after, however, the initial review is taken, how does it move to the next step? Does the auditor then, in your judgment, is that how you would like it? That the auditor then takes it from there and said, no, we should really use an outside counsel here at her discretion, or?
In almost all cases that have occurred so far in the life of the hotline, in fact, maybe in all cases, the determination has been made by the three officials meeting in this triage mode that the complaint that's been made is really personnel related at its core, and it's been referred to the HR department for investigation with department management and resolved at that level. And then it comes back to the auditor, and the auditor confirms that, yes, the appropriate steps have been taken to investigate, and it's been resolved.
And if I could elaborate on that example, again, with virtually every situation, or let me use the specific example of where there's a conclusion that an external investigator would be the best way to handle the complaint. It's the three representatives on this committee that will collectively reach that agreement and then gets assigned to whether it's the HR department that will bring on the investigator or the city attorney's office that would take the lead.
And is both of your understanding that this three-person committee would vote to do that on a majority basis?
It's a consensus, and we've never disagreed.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so for this section, I think that's my only questions.
Okay, so I have a question for the auditor. So for the language we see on packet page 8, the red lines in section 3, who wrote this?
The three of the committee members
Okay, and
reviewed this together.
okay,
So I think that if we make a difference or a distinction between the triage and the disposition, then the triage still would need an independent person
okay.
to be engaged in that.
Is that what the red lines say right now?
This really did not specify triage versus ultimate disposition of an allegation. So, but I think that has just come up, in our conversation here. So if we need to distinguish in terms of triaging the allegation at the onset, who would need to be replaced so as not to, have any conflict with that determination, as well as once the situation has been assigned or determined that it needs to go to an outside party, it would be a similar scenario.
Okay, I noticed some of the red lines are red and some of them are purple. What's the difference between the red and purple?
To be honest with you, I cannot answer that. As we were making updates, the colors were changing. This is track changes in this document.
Okay.
And so whenever you go back and forth, those colors were coming out in two different colors.
Okay.
So we didn't understand that either.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand kind of the proposal at a high level. The proposal at the high level, at least the rationale of why we want to do this is because if the person, one of the people on the committee is accused, there's a concern that having that person continue to participate in the committee is kind of like a conflict of interest. Is that the basic idea?
Yes.
Okay. And and so that makes sense to me, right? We don't want whoever is accused to be involved. That makes rational sense. Okay, so then the next step is then who should replace that person?
Correct.
And so it seems like the proposal here is to have people that are subordinate to the person being accused, right? So I guess in your professional opinion as a city auditor, how does that strike you, where the person that would be replacing the person that's accused is subordinate to whoever that person is on committee?
That would not be an ideal situation. So the committee discussed, as I believe the city managers just mentioned, the amount of time that it may take
Mhm.
to bring in external parties.
Mhm.
So if there's any way to, escalate that choice or to minimize the amount of time that it takes to select someone external, that would be the ultimate solution.
Okay,
But
so
that apparently that has not been, historically the case
okay,
with
so
this policy.
yeah, so I tend to agree with your rationale that having someone subordinate to someone being accused leaves that person who's subordinate in an incredibly difficult position, because they're they're supposed to be evaluating their boss, who in many cases will will continue to be their boss. So it's an incredibly compromising position to be in. So I understand the rationale of why it's not ideal. So I seem to concur with your line of thinking here. And so, there's a thing of getting a outside person, but in the end, the city auditors, the city manager, and city attorney all report to city council. So why not have someone on city council stand in a case when, and it's probably unlikely, but in the case of one of the three committee members that reports into council, because that's typically how it's done in the private sector, right? Is if I mean, it's very, and I've never seen someone subordinate replace someone that's being accused. That doesn't make sense. I've seen someone's boss do that. That makes sense because they're not subordinate. They're not going to be beholden to that person, and their fate in the future will not be in jeopardy, right? So that makes more sense. So why not? Why does it have to be an outside person? Why can't it just be someone from the city council?
It was my understanding that that is not permissible for the city
Okay.
council to participate.
Okay, and why is that?
I would turn that over to Molly.
Okay, so maybe can the city attorney tell us why and point out where in the code
Sure.
that's not permissible?
Yeah, let me lead off with that, if I might. I would note that, as has been described, virtually all of these complaints or issues have been personnel related or personnel complaints. And as such, having a city council member involved in the review and ultimately adjudication of a personnel complaint would cross a boundary between the policy role and the administration.
Okay, I guess I would like to see language that says that prohibits it. I know that's your opinion, but I don't agree with that opinion. I think that it's incredibly compromising to ask someone that's born to you to suddenly become the boss's judge. That's really weird. And I've never seen that, especially in the private sector.
I think it would clarify that there's no judgment involved in the role of this committee. You're suggesting that the committee member in particular would be standing in judgment of their boss, as you described it, but that's not the role of this committee.
So this committee is the Hotline Review Committee. So it's reviewing an accusation. So it has the power of saying nothing here, nothing to see. We don't need to do any investigation. Or it has the power of saying, City Council, we recommend that you dig into this further. So to me, that is an incredible burden you place on a subordinate who will have to judge their likely boss in the future. And so to me, it just seems like an incredible conflict of interest and compromising position to put someone in. So I guess maybe just to be specific here, I guess it was the city attorney who said that there is a law that prevents a city council member to be in the case when maybe one of the three CAOs is accused to step in. And I guess, can you cite where this law is that prevents that from happening?
I did not say that.
Okay, then I guess I misheard the city auditor. So city auditor, can you tell us again why
So-
a city council member cannot be a substitute on the hotline review committee?
The city auditor is referring to me because I did express structural concerns about having a council member sit in at this stage, this initial triage stage, which again, what happens at this stage is the three officials meet, look at what's come in through the hotline and say, what's the nature of this? What's the best way to investigate it? And then this group does not investigate and does not make substantive decisions about it. What the group does is say, it should go to this place next for an investigation to occur, either in-house or an outside person is retained who then does investigation. So it goes through a regular process, but these people don't do the process. So my structural concern is the one mentioned by the city manager, which is that the council sits in a policymaking role. And with respect to your CAOs, which is the example that we're talking about, you do have a very significant role of supervising and overseeing, hiring, reviewing, and potentially firing your CAOs. So if there was a serious allegation against one of your CAOs, the council would be involved, but it wouldn't be one council member, it would be the whole council, unless and until the council designated one of your own or two of your own to play a more specific role. So it wouldn't be that there would be a council member who would come down to the staff level to do some of this initial work, but rather you would be informed at the right time that there was a significant issue potentially or actually with one of your CAOs, and you would be charting a path forward and dealing with that in that context.
So let me see if I heard you correctly. So there is no law that prohibits it. And your opinion is that because this committee is routing, it has the power to route who will do the investigation and how this investigation will occur, that it's no conflict of interest of the person that's being accused is going to be influencing the decision of where it's going to get routed and processed. Is that what you're saying?
So council member, what I'm saying is complex and nuanced. So I'll just stick with the words that I used and not the words that you're choosing. What I would say is that the words conflict of interest are, the meaning of those vary depending on the context, and they're usually tied to law or procedure, and they mean different things. It is very common in the city world, so it's very common in the city attorney world, for example, for us to set up what's called a screen within our office so that attorneys in the same office who do ultimately report to the same person can play different roles in a process. And that type of process is recognized by courts. It's not addressed in this context of a hotline, but in other contexts in which people's knowledge of facts and independence need to be solid. Okay, so it can be recognized that this can legitimately be done. Ultimately, what council wants to do here is a policy question, and this is your procedure. You've heard my recommendation, you've heard some comments from the city manager and the auditor, and you can choose the direction forward that you believe is wise.
Okay, makes sense. So I'll give my opinion on this, which, if it isn't clear, is that I think because while the hotline review committee will not make the final decision, nor maybe perhaps do the investigation itself, how a complaint is processed, especially when it's one of our CEOs that's being accused, we owe it to the people to make sure that it's conducted at the utmost integrity possible. And that means, in my opinion, not having someone that's subordinate to the person being accused making that decision. And so, I think getting someone from the outside is fine to me, but I think the concern was it takes a long time. So if someone on council, maybe elected or appointed by the majority of council, I'm fine with that too. But I feel incredibly uncomfortable having someone subordinate, routing how a complaint against the CEO will be routed and processed. It seems like it seems not the right kind of thing to do for the interest of the people here. But okay, so does anyone else have any other comments on this? Otherwise, we'll keep moving. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. I have a couple more questions that might help me kind of sort through how I think about this. You mentioned a few minutes ago that it's almost virtually always been by consensus at the end of the day. But has it ever involved one of the three of you? Just generically? Or no, let me rephrase that. Has it ever involved a council appointed officer, not necessarily the three of you?
Yes.
And there was consensus.
There was a reasonable path charted, yes.
Because I think that the majority of the cases aren't really instructive here because it's not one of you. So that's my point. And I am kind of interested if we were, I mean, I like the consensus thing. I'm not sure we should mandate it. When my colleague Chair Tanaka mentioned majority vote, that kind of made sense to me. But again, I'd like to think about that a little more. My other question is, you were talking about routing, the preliminary screening, and thank you, City Manager, for kind of explaining the difference between the preliminary screen and the investigation piece. But the preliminary screen, is it just to route, or do you not have the option to say this does not need to be, this isn't credible, it doesn't need to be investigated?
So sometimes things have been determined not necessary for investigation for the reason that they've already been investigated.
Okay.
So the hotline has sometimes been used for repetitious complaints.
Sure, okay, great. But not a decision that the complaint, collectively need not be looked at, is not something that this group could do.
Pretty much complaints of a lot of different natures need to be investigated in one way or another these days.
Yeah, I'm more, again, honestly, for your sake, of the CAOs, that if you have the option to say, no, nothing to see here, that's a burden on you. I think that's kind of the concern. And but let me ask my third question, and then I'll make some comments. So our outside auditors in kind of a different position as being outside, but the city attorney as a CAO, is it inaccurate to say you're subordinate? I mean, I know in the org chart, but I mean, are we the only ones who can hire and fire you?
Yes, I do not report to the city manager.
Okay. So I think that that's an important distinction as well. So unlike just about everybody else at the city. That's important to know. So to me, some of those things make it less of a concern, but I still am troubled a bit by just the optics, but I prefer as a city council member not to get involved. I don't know how one picks which of the 7. We could figure that out, but what I do wonder is if it would be easy to have somebody just kind of designated stand-in on retainer, that's been a senior person in the city management in the area, that could be called on without a whole big review process. Because I still think that the optics are better for you and for us to go externally, but I don't want it to be a long, lengthy thing. So I just almost wonder if there could be, just like you have outside counsel, that if you get a labor case, you'll call, or you get a tort case, you'll call, who's the person you call for this? I mean, is there any reason we couldn't have something like that? Or when we do our reviews, we go to people like that. When we do the CAO reviews, could be perhaps the same pool of people that would do a CAO review.
Can I add to that? Yeah. I had 5 small points to make. One key one was the one you just made. But first of all, we have to address this from the starting point of this is really rare that this happens. So we're talking about corner cases here to begin with. And I totally support the whole concept of whistleblowing. And frankly, I believe that more is better than less. But when you get more rather than less, some of it's personnel issues or personality issues and is just not on base. So we're talking about corner cases, but those corner cases are important. So I think that's the thing that we're trying to get to here as I listen to colleagues with obviously no discussion of this beforehand. And I think what we're talking about in this particular ordinance is really restricted to fraud, waste, and abuse. Is that correct from the auditor standpoint? Or in other
Yes.
words, we're not dealing with sexual harassment or ethics, right?
No.
Okay, so that narrowness, I think we need to have a understanding of as well. And then this concept of having someone on retainer seems to be an interesting option for me. I was originally thinking of it could just be an attorney that we have on a retainer who deals with these kinds of issues, so that when it comes up, we say we want you to be on the committee, basically, to take a first look at this. Doesn't have to be a retainer. It could be somebody with city manager experience or whatever, but somebody that is an external party. Because I think that the council and the public, and frankly, all the city employees want to know that when this is looked at, it's going to be looked at correctly. They're going to come up with an honest answer and nothing's going to be covered up. And no one, that comment doesn't indicate that any CAO is going to. It just means that we need an audit process in place to make sure that it never happens. So if the person was on retainer, it would be pretty quick to get that person to come in and take the place of that CAO who could just step aside. And then you would have 2 independent people of the 3 people on the committee. So even a 2-1 vote there would be more helpful, because you would have, the CAO who is not under investigation, the independent auditor, and an outside person. So that has some appeal to me. But also, Ms. McCoy said that at the beginning here that you indicated that we're taking sort of a 2-step process. The first of which was preliminary, and the second would be the investigation. So how would you separate that in terms of it's not quite an indictment, but the beginning of the investigation, and then who actually conducts the investigation? Because again, we wouldn't want one of these compromised people to be driving who would do the investigation, just for not just optics, but for real independence.
Well, I think if the subject of the allegation is something that, of course, could be audited or reviewed or inquired by the city auditor's office without going to an external party or hiring an external party, then the disposition could be handled in that manner if it's appropriate, if the topic is, appropriate. And if it is not, then you would choose to have your external party be involved in the actual investigation if it's not, assigned to anyone who is internal.
So you're saying that would happen from the initial committee, and then maybe the external person is, or maybe the committee would say, this really is something that the director of HR can look at.
Correct. Or it may be something that you just want the audit department to review. But that would be the determination of how the allegation is going to be assigned or, investigated.
Okay, so if we decided to go that direction, I think we need wording in here to describe the 2 phases to make it more clear. That's just what I'm thinking. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Okay, so since we're on this topic and we got to make some red lines here, so I think both of you guys had the same suggestion, which is to have maybe someone on retainer. I think you guys both seem to support the idea of having someone that's truly independent for optics reasons, which I think makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if whether we just make these comments or we need to kind of craft the words here, or maybe if the auditor has some suggested wording that we could use.
Would you like me to provide that now or update this?
Maybe
Review
it's
red
better
line.
for you to update it and then we could review it next time, or if, I don't know if you guys have it's not that much language here, so we could probably do it right now too, but I don't know.
It depends on how many items there are here, but we might want to wait till the end to see if we can come up with a whole new motion. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe, you guys, okay, it's kind of, I think we kind of know where we are on this. So maybe let's move on, and then in the meantime, you could think about language, and perhaps even the clerk could come up with something. So, but, okay, let's move on.
Okay,
So just briefly, the city doesn't use traditional retainers in the sense that we pay people to be standing around ready. We don't pay people until they work. So I think what you're talking about is entering into a contract that in all likelihood would never be used, but would be sitting there and would be ready.
It's kind of an on-call contract.
Yes, exactly. It's on-call
Exactly.
contract. Thank you.
Okay,
okay.
City Auditor, do you want to go to the next section then?
Yes, point number 2 speaks about limiting the reporting from the hotline system so that if there was one of the committee members who is experiencing an allegation against them, they would not receive reporting out of the hotline system relative to that complaint. And that is found in,
Where's that red line? I don't know if,
Top of page 9.
top page 9, sorry. Okay, yeah, if you can move to that, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay, do my colleagues have thoughts, comments about this?
I do have one question. So I presume since we're starting to talk about 2 tiers, at some point, the person who has an accusation, we must and want to inform that person about this because that's part of the investigation, correct?
I would say, the close of that investigation, just to ensure that, again, there's no perception that anything has been compromised during the process.
Well, in terms of the investigation, if, a city manager did X, Y, Z in terms of fraud, at some point, an investigator is going to ask him, here's what happened. Can you describe what happened? Because we don't know if it's fraud. What's your opinion? Or something along those lines.
Council members, I have to interject here.
Okay.
This is a whole professional area of expertise, and we don't need to design it here in this committee, and we really shouldn't.
Not trying to, what I'm trying to address here is the fact that someone who's accused should know at some point what they're accused of.
Typically towards the end. So you hire a professional investigator. They gather facts typically by looking at documents and by interviewing witnesses. Witnesses may lead to other witnesses. If an individual is accused of some wrongdoing, they will need to be interviewed, typically towards the end of the process. Also, people have employment rights and constitutional rights that need to be honored, and professional investigators know how to do that. So we don't need to include that process here. As you say, this is a corner case, but it actually comes up in many, many investigations. And we don't describe it here because we don't need to. This is just needs to set the outline for how to move these things through.
I thought my colleague was just concerned about the absolute nature of the statement. He will not have access to such incident reports. Sounds like ever, and I don't think we mean that.
Exactly.
Thank you. That's absolutely correct. I think what the auditor meant by that was there's a piece of software that the auditor manages, hosts that actually IT and the auditor manage it, that keeps these documents and the notes of the system. And so the auditor is simply confirming what has always been the practice, which is that if one of the 3 individuals is involved as a subject, then they would not have access to that. Frankly, I've never had access to any of those documents except the initial complaint so that I can go to this initial triage meeting. So I don't think this is a big deal, but yes, what you said.
Perhaps you could tweak the language at the top of page 9 to make it less absolute, but to still comport with your procedures without changing anything.
I think we have a consensus on this. So I think that it sounds like the language here in general we support, but that it needs to also say that, for constitutional and other things that my colleagues have mentioned, we should, so that probably needs to be amended a bit. So, okay, so maybe let's move on to next one.
Okay, the last point was simply to add a link to a paragraph that made reference to the location that a person should go to if they are rendering an allegation against a council member, not an employee. because those types of complaints regarding council members do not remain internal. And so all we're doing here is adding the actual link to this commission that's being referenced.
Okay, are you looking at that on the screen, clerk?
It would be on 4 of 7 of the policy itself,
Paragraph starts with-
and it's under number 5.
starts with because.
A little bit more right here. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Paragraph beginning with because the members.
Okay. Any comments from my colleagues?
Just a question. I think I know exactly what it means, but again, this is narrowly about fraud and waste. And,
Correct.
and why would we take that to the FPPC? Because I mean, we're still city employees. I mean, we're not signing contracts, but we're approving contracts.
But I know it also says the district attorney's office or other appropriate outside agency. So it could be not just political, it could be criminal or other stuff.
Yeah, I was just a little bit surprised to see that the FPPC was the place that this was going to be reported if it was fraud or waste. That was my question.
It might not, but the way I read this. Referred to the FPPC, the DA's office, or other appropriate outside agency. I think the point is that it wouldn't be done internally.
Mhm.
And is that right?
Yes.
Well, a related comment that I have that's in the same paragraph, I actually thought the wording was a little odd to say that the members of the Hotline Review Committee are appointed by City Council. And technically, those particular CAOs are many times inherited by City Council. So it just,
Yeah, but we retain the power of firing, reviewing,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
everything
right.
else.
Exactly.
Institutionally, you
I
are the
mean, I
city
know
council.
that, I know
and-
that's the case. It's just the wording there was a little odd because it's a policy that's there, and unless we change it, it stays there, which means that every incoming CAO just inherits that right. So that's all right, because it's not part of the actual final wording, so. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so I think we have consensus on this FPPC link. City Auditor, was there something you wanted to talk about in terms of the paragraph above?
This just refers back to who will be the replacements.
Okay, so this needs to align to our earlier discussion then. Okay,
Correct, yeah.
okay, great. Okay, what's the next section that we should be looking at?
That is it. That concludes the points.
Okay, great. Okay, so I want to turn to my colleagues here. We had a fairly robust discussion on pack page 8. And I think we are fairly well aligned in terms of we don't want any perhaps bad optics, and we want some independent, not subordinate. So we all align on that, and perhaps maybe on contract. I don't know if the city clerk has some suggested language that we could perhaps use as a starting point.
Might I also suggest, or at least ask your views on, it may not even necessarily need to be one person, it could be a short list.
Sure.
You know, so you can see who's available or who's appropriate,
Sure.
whether it's an attorney or not an attorney. So maybe you have 2 or 3.
Sure. Do you have proposed language? You're the lawyer. So.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Does the city auditor have any proposed language that you would like to suggest to us?
Bear with me a moment here.
Okay, maybe as you prepare your thoughts, let's see. I think for the others, I think it's fairly straightforward. So I think we don't have too much there.
Yes, just a minor
maybe-
comment for number
maybe-
2.
Maybe as you think about this, I actually want to ask the city clerk, are there any public comments for this item? No?
No request to speak.
Okay, no request. Okay, sorry. City auditor, did you have some thoughts that you wanted to share with us?
In terms of number 1, I would say the sentence that is redlined.
So can the clerk please bring the language up, edit it as the city attorney talks?
This is in paragraph 3.
Can you share your screen, city clerk? Section 3, and have the lines editable so that you could change it as suggested by the auditor.
So the second red line where the sentence begins with Director of Human Resources.
Mhm.
The next line down, I think. And outside, would we want to say an outside party or parties will be contracted on call to serve as the replacement committee member? And then we would remove Director of Human Resources, or Chief Assistant City Attorney. And will this party need to be retained by City Council? That part should remain.
I think so.
Okay.
But I know my colleague just said that she had some language too, so I don't know. Okay.
So we remove or an outside attorney retained. Yes, well, if we determine who is retaining who is retaining the firm.
And I just want to note that I stand corrected. The word respectively is there. It wasn't in the staff report at the beginning, and I got confused then, and my brain iterated here, but it is here.
Okay.
Apologies for that.
Do you have comments on the proposed language? Or either?
It's a little generic.
Should we insert by whom
Yeah,
the
probably.
party would be contracted by?
Yeah, I think so.
After
Contracted to provide on-call services?
okay. Why don't you get that part? Mine goes to a slightly different piece of this. So the other, you're talking about flipping that phrase, we contracted on to move toward the end? Is that where?
Or just to more distinctively say they will provide the services to replace the committee member? Do we want to specify in the initial determination of how the allegation is investigated, or do we just want to leave it with they will serve as a replacement to the committee?
Oh, I see. And implicitly, that's the screening piece.
Right.
I'm okay with leaving it. What I was wondering is if we should say the alternative member of the committee, when an incident report involves a city manager or city attorney, shall be selected from a list of 2 to 3 outs, and then pick up again. Yeah, selected from, sorry. Selected from a list of 2 to 3 outside parties, at least one of which is an attorney, who will be contracted. I hate to say contracted with. With whom the city has an on-call contract to serve as the replacement committee member. It's a lot of words, but did we get there?
I think you're the lawyer here, so you're probably the best one of all of us. So it's good to me, but I don't know if, yeah.
And we would just need to say that the city council is
City council should probably approve it, right?
engaging in that contract.
Yeah, I'd love a couple of commas. So after party or parties, comma, at least one of which is an attorney, comma, just for readability. I know people don't like commas, but I kind of do. Thank you. The city has. I think we need to get rid of, right, has, with whom the city has contracted. Ed, I think you need to fix that. The city has a contracted on call by the city council. In the city.
Drop the
I just didn't
word
hear
A
you.
before contracted.
Yeah, I was gonna do that, but does that get us all the way there?
And I think you can delete everything after member.
Yeah, so delete A right before your cursor there.
And probably the stuff in purple. I think that's, yeah.
That can go.
And I think it's
And
redundant with whom the city has contracted on call by the city council, one or the other, but not both, right? Either the city is contracted or the,
It's got to be the city council, right? Otherwise, it's not clear.
okay, but with whom the city, can we get,
I know it's worded awkwardly, so we
so
should.
should it be
fix
with whom the city council has contracted?
Yeah, sure.
And then get rid of it after?
But the on-call verifies that it's not 3 existing contracts.
So the-
The words on-call show that it's done at the time that we need it to retain the person, but they're alerted, they're on call.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that last change doesn't trouble you. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's still wordy, but it's fine. It works.
It works
shorter.
for me, but the city auditor, do you have further thoughts, or does this look, from your professional opinion, look appropriate?
No, I think this describes what
Okay, so can
should
we,
be happening at the onset.
okay, great. Can we change the respective paragraph then on section 5, packet page 9? Or did you have anything else?
I think we should also get rid of the word respectively because we've kind of screwed up the parallelism there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay, okay, great, thank you. Can we fix the second paragraph, the second on packet page 9 too then? Oh, sorry, before we do that, we have to fix top of packet page 9, section 4, we have to fix that to cover community member allowings comment.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. Do you have, before we move on, do you have something else?
It still said party or parties, and
Oh,
we
yeah,
should say
that's right.
2 to 3,
That's right. Okay, we gotta go
parties.
fix that too. That's right.
get rid of party or.
That's right. Okay. Okay. And then, yeah, then let's fix the last second part. Did you have suggested language?
Hadn't thought about that, but that's probably maybe for the city attorney, but it's sort of like will not have initial access to such incident report, but will at the appropriate time or something like that. Just to make sure, as Councilmember Baker said, that it's not absolute.
Yeah, I think you just need to say that he or she will not have access to the city's internal hotline complaint record system, or however, Adrian, however you want to refer to that.
Right. The city's internal hotline complaint system would work because that's literally the system.
So should we get rid of the initial then?
Correct.
And the such incident report at the end.
Sorry, what did you say?
And also get rid of the such incident report at the end,
Yeah,
right? Shall not have access to the city's internal hotline complaint system, period.
Oh, I see. Okay.
right.
Nice.
Mhm.
Does this solve it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go on to packet page 9 then. Section 5. Oh, actually, we're not done.
Oh.
Section 5, packet page 9.
Paragraph 2.
That's just parallel language to what we just crafted on
Just
the
have to fix that,
prior
yeah.
page, yeah.
Yes.
I don't need to do that. as a
Okay.
group.
Okay, yeah, I agree. We probably don't need to do that as a group. So can we rely on staff to fix this? Okay, so I guess maybe the city auditor, you could take the lead on that one then. But maybe we should just put it up so that we can vote on this, the committee.
Well, I had another,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I had another issue that's not covered here.
Oh, okay.
That I
Yes,
want to,
yes, please.
so this, let's say an investigation said, yeah, we'd investigate this. It's not just a personnel problem. And there is an investigation and then there's an outcome. At what point and what content and timing does council get informed? Because if they're particularly if there's a CAO involved.
Right, so council members, this is this situation, as you say, very, very rare, but it can occur in a city. And it needs to be handled very carefully and sensitively. And the way forward is going to depend on the facts and circumstances. So I'm confident that with your 3 of your 4 CAOs involved in this process, well, the one would not be, but the other 2 would, that there would be really close attention paid to bringing the council in at the right time and in the right way. And I don't think that you can script that out in this policy. Nor do you need to.
Nor do we. I didn't hear that
Need
part.
to.
I was just thinking that we want to make sure that the public doesn't think that this always stays private, regardless of what the outcome is. And so there should be some way that says, you know, outcome of this will be communicated to council.
Right. There is a reporting process that's in the hotline policy already. And that's, I think, is under the vast majority of cases, this is a summary report that does not include details because it almost always would involve the conduct of city employees that you don't appoint, the 1,000 that you don't appoint, right? And so council gets a very high level summary of what has occurred. You haven't seen those, but the policy does call for them to be provided. And I think this practice has fallen off, but previously the auditor did provide that report on a, whatever the policy calls for, quarterly basis, yeah. So with respect to your own employees, your responsibilities are much more significant. So if there was an investigation of, say, the conduct of city attorney, you would receive the investigation and you would be responsible for making decisions about what to do. So it would not just be a summary report of an outcome. You would be a decision maker on how to handle your personnel.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I'm talking about 2 things, and I'm not trying to make that clear. One is, I think in general, it would be good for council to know that in a year or a quarter, we've had 3 hotlines or 23 hotlines that are being investigated just as a point of interest. And if 20 of the 23 were in pick a department, the planning department, maybe we'd want to ask the city manager what's going on in the planning department.
Yeah.
So that would be one thing. But the second thing is that these things that once they are resolved, if a CAO has been under investigation, I think, again, the public and the council would like to know that it was investigated by whoever, and we decided that it should go to the HR department and it's resolved, or we looked at it and it's unresolved and we don't agree with that line or the whistleblower or something like that. I mean, I'm making this up. I don't have a wording about this, just
Yes.
kind of trying to explain.
The
about it.
reporting process is in the policy already. So I would refer to the city auditor as to the practice of implementing that.
Right. I would want to clarify the extent of detail you would like to see in that quarterly report. Would it be a count perhaps of what transpired on a rolling basis and then open or close in terms of status, or is there some particular detail that you would be looking for to also be included?
Madam
Because
Auditor,
essentially those reports would be reported to you quarterly in P&S meetings, for example.
as the city attorney said, that in paragraph 8, it specifies that we should get the number of reports made to the hotline and their status, open or closed, the general types of complaints received, any trends in the types of complaints received, which I think would be Councilmember Loung's, you know, there's a whole
Mhm.
bunch in one department or a whole bunch of a certain kind. And then a general description of corrective action. I think what's there is good, by my view. Does that meet your expectations?
Yeah, probably. I think if once every 10 years, it's a CAO, we're probably spending too much time on this already, then, we should know what happened. So that's all I was concerned about.
I think if
You'll decide what happens. You won't just know. You'll decide.
Well, we will if the outside investigator in the committee says that we should take some action. They could also just send over and say it's a personnel matter, which is okay. We should know that.
It's your personnel matter. You will get a report and you will need to decide what to do.
Okay.
I don't think it gets outsourced as much to HR as for every other employee except the CAO. So we'll get a whole deal, I think.
Now I'm going to a subset of a subset, just to make this point, which is that I don't expect to ever see one of these things. But if it comes back and say it was investigated, we don't need to take it to you because we thought it was bogus and it was a personnel issue and that probably guy is going to get fired. We might want to know more. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's nobody with the authority to make a decision that no action is necessary except the council if it involves a CAO. So you will hear about it.
Okay.
Okay, so the language in front of us, we all agree has to be changed, but can the clerk, actually, first of all, does anyone here want to make a motion on the changes here for the recommendation to council?
Sure, I'll move that that the policy be amended as we've discussed.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, can the clerk take the vote, please?
Chair Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Lowing,
Yes.
Councilmember Vinker,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, great. So that closes that item. We're on to the next item, item 2. Does staff have a presentation they'd like to review with us?
Good evening, Chantel Cotton Gaines, Deputy City Manager. This evening, we are bringing forward one of the referrals that came from the City Council through a colleague's memo to this committee for discussion. The item is related to a recommendation regarding friendship cities. Just to bring everyone up to speed, the dialogue that happened at the City Council was whether the city should consider adding friendship cities as part of our portfolio of international affairs. Friendship City, in the way that it was described in the colleagues memo, is intended to be a lighter touch connection with other communities besides our existing 8 sister cities around the world and our 1 sibling city. We have had some interest come from different communities abroad, and so that is the impetus of what brought this item before the City Council. The referral that came to this committee specifically was looking at the resource and staffing impacts of this program. So for some context, a lot of our existing sister city relationships started off as something less formal. And so if the committee is making a recommendation to council to formalize such a program as Friendship Cities, staff presented a few questions for this committee to think about in terms of resource impacts. I will read those. They're at the bottom of packet page 13, going into packet page 14. One is whether we should identify a set number of friendship cities if we do move forward with this program. These are all if the recommendation is to move forward with the program, these are things to think about. Would you like this to be a pilot program with no more than 2 or 3 cities with an evaluation after a year or 2? What number of events or visits will the city allow related to each individual friendship city? This is in relation to the time and attention that we would take here locally in order to entertain the other cities if they are visiting Palo Alto. And for context, pre-pandemic, we would often have a lot of other cities visiting our community, so that's not unheard of to imagine happening. The next question we added here is how can the city limit the friendship cities to just that without it becoming a new sister city? If there are some thoughts around that. And lastly, can a friendship city formal agreement last only for a set number of years? So if we are creating this program and adding on friendship cities, will we add an automatic end point so that that is established at the impetus of the relationship with other cities. These are just some of the questions that we are posing to the committee to think about, particularly knowing that internally as staff, we are close to the point of needing dedicated resources for our existing sister city relationships, even with all the amazing things Neighbors Abroad does to maintain our 8 sister cities and 1 sibling city. And this would be adding on top of that. And there's not one dedicated staff member assigned to our international affairs portfolio. And that concludes my overview. Thank you.
Okay, does the clerk have anyone from the public that wants to speak on this item?
No request to speak.
Okay, so we're going to close public comment. So to handle this discussion, staff has outlined 5 questions. And so maybe what we could do is we could take one question at a time and go through all 5 so that staff has some direction. So maybe let's start with the first question. Should the city identify a set number as a total number of friendship cities? So my colleagues, please stick to the microphone and give opinion.
I guess to me, it's hard to answer that alone, because in the colleagues memo, they suggested that the Friendship City Agreement would be limited to 3 years, subject to council renewal for a test of time. And I sort of like the idea of seeing in those 3 years how it evolves and what resources it takes, and if it stays lighter, or, you know, what we think of it. And I doubt, I mean, I could ask actually Deputy City Manager if there's, you know, how many friendship cities are waiting in line, but I would think we wouldn't have more than, you know, 2 to 3 in those 3 years, at which point we could reevaluate it. And I assume perhaps even less than that.
Present day request,
Yes.
there are about 2 that I think are very actively reminding us that they have requested a relationship. I'd say looking back over the last 5 years, there have been enough delegations visiting pre-pandemic even, where if they had the opportunity to become a friendship city, my guess is they would have requested it. So it's a hard answer. It's not as hard and fast as you imagine, but I'd say present day, it's maybe 2 or 3 between us and Neighbors Abroad that we're aware of.
So you mentioned delegations coming to visit without any formal relationship. Given the lighter touch of a friendship city versus a sister city, what difference would there be between the delegations that come now and a friendship city, other than calling them a friendship city? Are there practical differences?
Great question. I think it depends on how we develop the relationship. So for a delegation who is coming from somewhere abroad and says, I'm visiting Palo Alto, I would like to learn more about the city. Can you find some staff member who can make time to meet with us? That's typically what a random delegation visit would look like. In terms of a friendship city, I presume there would be an expectation of some sort of conversation that would be a through line as opposed to a random presentation about the council manager form of government and all the amazing things there of Palo Alto. So if there are additional conversations, learning opportunities between their community and our community in any kind of way, that could be as big or as small as the 2 parties make it.
Because another thing in the colleagues memo, when they, I'm sorry, this is straying a little bit, but I sort of, they're inextricable for me. They talked about the, what page is this on? I guess page 17 of the packet. They talked about proposed framework for a friendship city agreement. And they said, you know, document that sets a description of the prospective friendship city, expected activities, and a rationale for formation, which comports with Neighbors Abroad's policy for friendship cities. I couldn't find attached, maybe it was and I missed it, apologies, Neighbors Abroad's policy for friendship cities. Do you know what that is? Because that would help us understand what we're talking about here.
I do not have that formal policy, and I don't know if they've adopted it or if that's something they would do. I'm
I
sorry,
see.
I don't have that information.
Okay. And just quickly, at the top of that page, I'm using the downloaded packet and the stickers right over some of the language. where they're talking about sort of the purpose that Neighbors Abroad endorse the development of Friendship City Agreement with the following parameters. And there's a quote, it says, to develop a revenue neutral relationship for a fixed term called, and I assume it's Friendship Cities or something, but then there's something else under there. Do you know what, do you have one that's unredacted or unstickered? Just a little thing, but it would be helpful.
The clerk is pulling it up for us.
Okay, thank you. But you have paper, you might have it. Top of page.
ED. It's led, LED, by a community member.
So to develop a revenue neutral relationship, a fixed term called a,
Friendship City, comma, led by a community member.
thank you. Okay. All right, I'll stop for now.
Okay. Do you have any?
Yeah, number of comments, but I kind of want to go to the broader issue here. To me, this issue for us, like frankly, everyone, but this is a priority issue of all the things that we're doing, and can we fit something else in for staff? And on packet page 14, staff comments that depending on the amount of time needed for these activities, existing staff must redirect time for other council priorities and assignments to accomplish the tasks, which is of course concerning because I don't know where this priority fits compared to housing and climate and things like that. And then further on the back, you absolutely correctly point out, as was pointed out in the council packet, that we can expect where friendship cities want to become more formally connected to Palo Alto as sister cities. So they might look upon this as just sort of an entry point to get to a fuller relationship, which is more complex. And then, as you just essentially indicated, Deputy City Manager, that this just will attract more bees to the hive, and because it's fun to do. So I'm just really concerned overall about that issue here as we look at adding this. If we were to do anything more than what we're doing now, I think we really would want to narrow it with some of these criteria as asked by the questions, the 5 questions on packet page 13 and 14. Because we know it takes more time and we know we don't want to add more staff just for this. And it seems like that's going to be inevitable if we do very much extra at all right now. So if we're just getting back to your question, if we want to just talk about number 1, I think we should be very limited on the number of total friendships. New ones.
Well, I'd like to understand a little more about these staff demands. So under the fiscal resource, and I'd also like to know, well, let me before I ask that, this is all on the what we give, what we put into it, what expenses, what it takes from us. There's nothing here about what we get from it. Could you talk a little bit about it, or do you not think the city gets anything as a city?
That's a very broad question. I appreciate it. I will skirt it a little bit if that's okay. The opportunity afforded to the city by these relationships is definitely a learning opportunity for any of our international or domestic, I make sure I don't leave our sibling city out, relationships. So we have the opportunity to share things that we're doing here, and we have the opportunity to learn what other places are doing in whatever part of the world they may be in. So that is a big opportunity for us, whether that's cultural or programmatic in any kind of way. The reason I limited it to the resources for us locally is just because that was the scope the council gave for the committee to review. We are definitely have more of a presence abroad on any of these things than we have teams to support. For comparison, for some of our existing sister cities, I use Heidelberg as an example. Heidelberg started with us as a smart city relationship some years ago, and it grew into a sister city relationship. all of our existing sister cities started off as a informal relationship of some sort and grew into a formal sister city, going all the way back to 1960, all the way through our newest ad of a sister city with Yangpu in 2018 or 19. And in the case of Heidelberg, in their mayor's office, they have about 3 dedicated staff members for their sister city relationships. And I believe they only have 3 sister cities. They're not uncommon in that structure where we have other sister cities that have an actual dedicated staff of people and they're regularly doing programs and developing new things to do. So typically when they interact with us, they're very, very surprised to see that the city's resources are far more limited on Palo Alto's side than it is wherever they are. And Neighbors Abroad does an amazing job for us. And half of our street cred in our international affairs, or more than half, is definitely with the work of Neighbors Abroad. But still, it does require some city staff time. And that involves things like organizing staff so that we can have the presentations on the content related to when delegations are visiting, or when we are sending our elected officials abroad, making sure that they are armed with useful information to share while they're there. We want to connect staff and staff to staff and resident to resident between the cities, and that also takes time. Coordinating gifts related to visits and lots of other small things, room reservations, et cetera. So it's not all very exciting tasks, if I'm being completely honest, but it is tasks that takes time. And working in partnership with Neighbors Abroad is a very important piece of that, but it still does require someone to divert time from something else in order to put focus on this to make it happen.
The cities that have substantial staff resources, such as I think Heidelberg was one, do you have an understanding as to why they do that?
I think economic development in a lot of these cities is more greatly tied to their international interactions, on average, I would say. Part of that is just government structure being different in other countries than it is here in the US.
And we've recently started to have an economic development, at least executive, and we'll perhaps grow that program. So we could perhaps be evolving there. Because I do think that there are benefits as well to the city. It's not just a giving thing. And I wasn't aware that there were gifts and travel arrangements and all of those things that a sister city could avail itself of. So that's good to know. But would that be the case for a friendship city with a lighter lift? I mean, would we do all of that?
I think that's the open question of if a friendship city is really a light touch as described.
What does that look like?
Can
I think that's the real
can we
question.
actually hold
How is
ourselves
that
to
different?
that?
Because,
Exactly, because you don't want, and we don't want to afford more to a friendship city than we do to an existing sister city.
If I could just make one more point, Councilmember, through your questions, I think it's important to note that the staff assignment here was to identify the fiscal resource impact. It was not to suggest that there is a lack of value that are gained through these relationships. So I certainly don't want to suggest that we don't see value. I think, again, our assignment was to identify the resource impact, so that's what we are contributing to the conversation. Ultimately, not unlike the last discussion, and as Councilmember Lowing pointed out, this is a question of priority and how much effort really to put behind the concept here. And I appreciate the conversation because this is really kind of where the rubber hits the road in the magnitude of effort that is involved, both from the city staff as well as from other community members, and recognizing the value.
Yeah, well, City Manager, thank you. I think for me to answer the question about resources, you have to look at both sides of the ledger. And so it's not just, so even though that, so I don't take it as any lack of acknowledgement of it, but when I'm asked about how many and how long and those kinds of things, to me, it goes beyond just how much we put into it. It's also how much we get out of it. So we net, how much do we net out one way or another, informs my decision about this. So if we find that one of these other cities gives us some great lessons about economic development or tourism or, all various things. Maybe you could have gotten that at your conferences and we didn't need it. Maybe not. I don't know. But some of those things I think are interesting, or even just a value to our city, because we're in the business of providing services to residents. So, if someone flies in musicians not on their own nickel or does other things, which we've seen happen, does the city want to make that happen? Maybe, and culturally enrich, maybe not. But I just feel like we're just focusing on, just the outflow, and that's why I'm raising it. I'm not saying you're judging that in a negative way. I'm just trying to make sure we put both on the table.
Appreciate that. A couple of considerations there, even among our staff discussion, again, taking advantage or really full benefit of a friendship or sister city relationship arguably might even involve a greater investment of our own resources, such as to send key staff to do study tours at our sister cities in order to get that firsthand knowledge. Again, tremendous benefit, but also an allocation of resources. So again, not necessarily leading one way versus the other. I would note, and I think it's important and fair to point out, that our focus on economic development as it is taking shape here in Palo Alto is expressly locally focused, as opposed to the type of international economic development that
Sure.
our sister cities are interested in generating, basically to seek the secret sauce of Silicon Valley, and that we have our own version of that, where in particular around sustainability efforts, there are lessons to be learned internationally that we wouldn't necessarily see domestically. But again, those are typically not framed in an economic development context.
Yeah, and I see why they might do more of that than we would do in terms of the international. But I guess, honestly, when I read the under fiscal resource and look at the bullet points, they seem like more than I've seen on the sibling city, frankly. And so I thought that was more of a substantial relationship. So I just look at this and wonder if it really is that demanding. So that's part of why I'm confused and trying to explore it. But I know that's not our topic tonight. And if it were, I'd be off the dice. So, but just in terms of this, it's surprising to me that this list would be here, because it's not a list I would have expected to see for a friendship city that I thought was a lighter thing than our other relationships.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can offer in thoughts of that is that's part of why the idea of even a pilot or a limited term of something really stands out, because if the city designs it in a way where it's intended to be the lowest possible touch level ever, and comparing that in relation to our sister cities, then maybe that's what it'll actually be. But maybe it will prove to be more time, and that reevaluation opportunity is really what's critical. So we've listed here what we've seen as efforts necessary for any international touch point. Like there's always a staff to staff piece, even if Neighbors Abroad is doing the bulk of the work. And so that's kind of why you see the bullet points here, because they'll reach out to staff first, or they will ask us to coordinate something for the mayor or whatever the case may be. And those are typically things that are handled on a staff to staff basis, not going through Neighbors Abroad, even as we bring Neighbors Abroad in the conversation. It varies by city, but typically speaking, that is how it works, because in some of those other cities, it is such a formal program that the mayor staff in that city may prefer to reach directly out to our staff. And of course, we bring Neighbors Abroad into the conversation. So it varies. And to your other point, the last thing I'll reference is our range of interaction for our 8 sister cities varies greatly. We have some sister cities where we're regularly in communication with them, donating large vehicles to help out in some kind of way, helping rebuild some resource in those cities. Others where we're focused on climate and sustainability, and others where it's been dormant for years and we're just starting to rekindle it. So the range of our interactions with sister cities varies greatly, but the intention is if there's interest on both sides, that we would be engaged at a higher level for sister cities.
So maybe if they're the ones that are initiating the staff to staff, perhaps there's, we set a different expectation for the friendship cities. as opposed to what you've typically done for the sister cities. And it's more of a independent resident to resident thing with the blessing of the city, but perhaps a presentation here and there, but not all of the things that we just talked through. Could it be done that way, or?
I think that's potentially could work, but I think it will also require a lot of discipline on the part of the city to not make that grow any further. Mr. Shikata?
I was just going to add that I think it's entirely within the scope of the committee's discussion if that were a level of guidance that would address the issue of resources required.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I just want to make the comment, listening to the comments. I think what the city manager is saying is that the benefits are really on us to put out there, whereas he had the responsibilities of putting out, these are the costs to get to whatever the benefits are. So I think those are more on us. If we would want to articulate those, then I think that would be the equation that we'd want to be looking at. I think that certain examples like Heidelberg are a good example because that's a big enough city that if they wanted to do real economic development and say, we're thinking of putting 3 factories in Palo Alto, obviously making this up, they would get our attention without being a designated sister city. So I think that these opportunities to have international relationships could be, the focal points could be driven by, economic development, which is quite different than, trying to fix retail on California Avenue. So I don't think, I guess the global sentence here, pun intended, is that we're not excluding relationships with important international partners if we don't have a designated program, a new designated program, or expanded designated program on specific sister cities. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, so thank you, colleagues, for sharing your thoughts. So I'm actually probably leaning towards committee member Lowing on this one. I know I know the staff is always telling us about how understaffed they are and how many different programs they have to support and whatnot. And I do recognize the fact that sister cities and friendship cities offer social, perhaps even economic benefit. And I do like what Neighbors Abroad has done, which is great. And I think they're doing the heavy lift, and that's awesome. But I do wonder if less is more here. I mean, I found it. I didn't realize Heidelberg only had, we said 2 sister cities, maybe 3. How many do we have? 8. Okay. And how big is Heidelberg? Okay. Well, anyways, so it's kind of remarkable that we have 8, and
160,000.
160,000. So it's like double our size, right? More than double our size. So more than double our size, and they only have 3 sister cities, or 2, or whatever, some low number. My feeling is that if Neighbors Abroad or other private groups can support this themselves without a lot of staff support or time or money from the city budget, I'm all for it, right? We should totally support it. And if they could do 20, awesome. If they could do 10, awesome. If they could do only 8, that's fine too, right? But if it means that we have to, get rid of our crossing guards, or if it means that we have to jack up our rates, or if it means that we have to, impact our city economically, I think that's, to me, where the line is drawn. So when I look at question number 1, should the city identify a set number as a total number of friendship cities? To me, it's more about, I'm all cool with calling something a friendship city, as long as we don't have to do any real work for it, as long as staff doesn't have to do any real work for it, as long as we don't have to take money from our budget, or we have to take, we have to shut down a, middle school sports program to support this, right? I'm all game for, and I think that, so to me, the number really should be set by, what does, like Neighbors Abroad, what can they support? I think that, so if it's 5, great. If it's 0, great. But it's not great if it's 1, and it means that we have to we have to, because this is a resource competing for other things like, crossing guards, right? I don't think we want to, trade crossing guard for a Friendship City. So that's kind of where I'm leaning on it. I think supporting it in terms of brand name is all great, but in terms of economics and, serious staff resources, I think we have to be cautious here. But I think if we can leverage Neighbors Abroad group and give them the moral support needed to carry this forward, I think that's pretty cool. But my feeling also is that sometimes, like I said it before, less is more. Sometimes maybe focusing on a few sister cities might be good, because maybe we get more of each sister city. And personally, I do think that, especially here in America, we're such a big country that we don't have to think internationally very much. And so I love I hear about the exchange program. I think it's awesome. I think that's great. We want to support that kind of stuff. But I think that's largely done through Neighbors Abroad. So anyways, so in terms of question one, I am kind of like really, as long as it doesn't impact our resources, I'm good with just about any number. Okay, so let's move on to 2, and then I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this. Would this be a pilot program with no more than 2 or 3 cities with an evaluation after a year or 2? So why don't you guys go ahead and comment?
Sure, and I think that's what they're asking for in the colleagues memo, so I think that's fine. Pilot, I think they said 3 years, they wanted to let it bake. I did want to mention that I think the question I don't know the answer to is how many sister cities do US cities typically have? This is a US program created by a United States president to try to prevent a third world war. This was in the wake of World War II, when we were not getting along well with the rest of the world. And he tried to have citizen ambassadors instead of just professional State Department ambassadors. And so it really started here, emanated from here. And so you're going to see a lot of cities here have more than necessarily a Heidelberg or others. I don't know what that number is. I suspect we're at the high end, to your point. But I think an issue is that, it's sort of like family. You can't fire family. Once they're a sister city, what do you do? So I think some have gone dormant just sort of naturally, but we haven't formally dissociated. And I get the sense, because I haven't spoken to the authors of the college memo about this, so I don't know, but I get the sense that there is some interest. Times have changed, the world has evolved, and they hate to say we're full for the rest of eternity. Palo Alto has 8, we're done. So I think they're struggling to do something that's lighter, that isn't such a burden on staff, that allows us the flexibility to take advantage of a new world and new opportunities and things that come up with interest. So that said, to that specific question, I think we should do it sort of on a trial, see what this beast is, see how it goes. And yes, thank you.
Okay, do you have comments on question 2?
Yes, I think it should be, as I said before, a narrow and a pilot with a certain endpoint, and we're the committee that can suggest that endpoint based on, but not absolutely committed to the colleagues memo, so we can figure out what might work best there.
Okay, yeah, so for 2, my answer is going to be very repetitive to number 1, which is I'm pretty much game for anything as long as it doesn't require a lot of, or any actually city resources or money. So I mean, if two is it with a year or 2 and it could kind of all be handled by Neighbors Abroad, great, I'm all game for it. But if it means that we got to, cut our crossing guards to support this, I don't think that makes sense. So that's my feeling 2. Let's move on to 3. 3 is, what number of events or visits will the city allow related to each individual Friendship City? This note is in relation to total amount of time to spend on each Friendship City, especially in comparison to existing sister or sibling city relationships. So I don't know if you guys have thoughts or comments.
Yeah, I'd start with that one by saying that that one I'd actually just say we should use staff's judgment, because one event could be small and another one could be big, and I just think we should leave that in staff discretion. that be part of our direction on how to manage this if we go forward with it.
Okay, do you want,
And you're talking about visits here, not delegations we send there. Is that right?
I'm just reading the question,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
so,
I'm just trying to look at the author. I think she's nodding.
Correct. That was the intention of time we would spend if a delegation were coming to Palo Alto.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague, Councilmember Lowing. I mean, I think 1 or 2 per year is probably as much as anyone would do. I mean, the folks in Indiana are a lot closer than others, and they only, come once last year and haven't even come this year. So I think, there's costs for everybody, for people to come here too. So, but I would leave that to your discretion. I do want to follow up on something that the chair has said a couple of times about, the dollars and not wanting to cut crossing guards and stuff. I think that's sort of a false comparison in the sense that, yeah, there's a finite number of dollars, but, maybe you cut the UNAF Film Festival. I'm not suggesting we should. I don't want any nasty letters, as they say, but there's lots of things we do in this city with discretionary and arts and culture and things, and we should. And I think it's not necessarily, so we're still asking the right questions about resources, but I think, again, we look at, as you said, the student exchange programs, the kids that went to Enschede this summer, all of those things I think are benefits to the city. So.
okay, so, yeah, so, again, my answer for number 3 is pretty much like the answers number 1 and 2, which is, really if staff could do without any budget or resources or impact to any other program, I'm game for it. Now, like my fellow committee member actually brought up a good point, which I think is a good point, which is if, let's say there's another thing we're doing that's of lesser impact up to the city, and we're willing to, make that trade, I'm actually okay with that too, right? So if there really is some sort of oddball film festival that we're doing that has really no sensible impact on the city, then okay, yeah, sure, let's swap it for something that has a bigger impact. But I think as long as it's something like that and not, cutting one of the services to our city that people really depend on, I think that's my main concern. So, anyways, yeah, I guess, yeah, for 3, it's really kind of, if you could stay without, if you could fly below the radar, basically, not really impact anything, I'm okay. And especially if our sisters or if our neighbors abroad organization is willing to step up, that's even better, right? Or if, kind of like my colleague said, if there's some other program that really is, kind of wasteful or, then yeah, maybe we should consider that. But I think we should be pretty explicit what that is, because I think my main concern is I hear almost every single time from staff that they have too much to do. And I know the situation, when you have, subordinates tell you they have too much to do and you keep piling more stuff on, you're not helping, right? It's just actually making things worse. So we as the leaders in the city need to make those hard decisions as to what do we take off the plate. We can't just keep adding stuff to the plate. So if we are willing to take stuff off the plate because it really is less worthy than having a new sister city or a new friendship city, then okay, let's do that. But I think for us, we need to make that decision. We can't just say, yep, yes to everything and expect staff to perform, because I think that's not reasonable. We're not doing our jobs if we do that. Okay, so let's move on to 4. How can city limit friendship cities to just that without each one becoming a new sister city? So my colleagues, please comment.
I think if we promoted anyone, it would have to be a later decision based on results there. In other words, there's no automatic promotion. It's not the Boy Scouts. If you get a couple merit badges, you get another stripe. And I say that only not because I'm expecting any of them to fail, but we just can't handle the volume if it really cranks up. So I think there's no automatic entry to sister city is how I would address that question.
Okay, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's just one step at a time, no process.
If I can jump in on this one, I do think in the early conversations with whichever cities we choose to establish a friendship city, it'll be really important to iterate this point, mostly because from my looking at all of our existing sister cities, they started with something informal. When the pressure comes to make that something more formal into a sister city, I have not seen the city say no. Respectfully. And so I think though it sounds like a small question, it's actually a pretty big one when the community is saying, well, we don't have this type of connection yet. And should we do this one? And then there may be no other justified reason except for you have 8 sister cities. You don't want to add 9 or 10 or whatever the number may become. So I'm just offering that as additional thought for the committee, where I think it would be important in the initial conversation, especially if the city represents a different part of the world than our existing sister cities. There could be a very high propensity to want to make that relationship more formal in some kind of way. And I'm preempting a conversation we'll have in 2 or 3 years, but I think that that's something for us to keep in mind in setting the expectations with whomever we choose to connect.
The expectation being that just because the relationship goes well, they won't necessarily become a sister city. You're not saying they can't. Because I would have a problem with that, honestly, because I think that we're also getting to the point that they're getting so many that they're not that meaningful. But I think that's the conversation to have. The conversation could be, I mean, if there were a very good reason to do it, I would hate to have made an arbitrary decision not to. If there's something that's really extraordinary and you wanted to step it up, I just don't know that tonight we should say no. I think, though, that to say, we don't have bandwidth for more, but we really, that's why we want to do a friendship city with you now, and that's all we're doing. And it's just a separate conversation, I think. And I understand these things evolve and there gets to be pressure, but then we either stand strong because it's not the right thing, or we say yes because we've figured out some way to make it work and, the budget and all that.
Yes, I completely understand. I just mean setting the expectation that it's not a guarantee is the piece to share with other cities right now. And then in the report back from your committee to the full council, I do think that's an important note, that moment could very well come. And it will require one of the options that you just stated. And for that to be clear at this time as part of the decision-making, I think is important.
It will come. I mean, I'd say that's absolutely going to happen. So
Absolutely.
if we wanted to, give more teeth to that, so we just are very clear about it, we could cap some number of sister cities right now, which of course we can change later. But just say there, again, to reiterate what I said, there's no automatic entry here. And frankly, there aren't even any criteria right now. We just can't handle very many.
Okay. Let's see. So on 4, did you have any thoughts on 4? No. Okay. So
that was my comment
okay,
on 4.
That's fine. Yeah. So my thought on this one is, I think if we could make an explicit trade in terms of time and resources, or it could be covered by some nonprofit. I don't necessarily have an issue with it. But I think it has to be a trade. It can't just be an ad, because I think we always do ads. We don't really do a trade, and I think that's very difficult for staff. We put staff in a very difficult position when we expect them to perform, yet we don't give a reasonable workload, right? I think we set people up for failure. So I don't think that's appropriate. Okay, number 5. Can a friendship city formal agreement last for a set number of years? 1 or 2, for example, and then conclude as a formal relationship. This allows for more opportunities to connect broadly. So do my colleagues have thoughts on number 5?
Number 5 has led me to think about a couple of related options, which is, so yes, I think we could set it for a set number of years and then subject, so there's no automatic renewal. There would have to be a analysis and potential renewal. But the default is that it would expire, but for excitement to renew, which as my colleague and the deputy city manager said, is luckily, so there'll be pressure. But what I do wonder, could we say, and I don't know, this may be complete heresy, and I would want to go talk to the neighbors abroad people, but could we not say, especially for some of our more dormant sister cities, There's an option to downgrade to a friendship city. Or we say, we're looking, we have so many, we can't manage them all. We haven't been doing much. We're going to set a 5 or 10-year sort of expiration date and see how it goes in the next decade, and I don't know, maybe we set certain things for what a sister city relationship is. And if that relationship isn't having delegations or isn't doing stuff, maybe it gets downgraded. That might be a friendlier way. This may be crazy, but I almost feel like to say, gee, if in the next 10 years we don't ever send delegations back and forth, maybe we should either, I don't know. There's some way to do that, because it would not then add the burden, and nor would it preclude exciting new relationships. So just a thought.
Yeah, a sunset provision.
Sunset.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense. And if we do have unproductives ones now, then why keep them, to be blunt about it?
But we have to do so carefully.
Yeah, there's a lot of diplomacy necessary in that, but
Yeah, I didn't mean that. So thank you for the correction for the record.
So on number 5, were you done? Okay, on number 5, I agree with my colleagues on this one, which is I like the idea of a sunset provision of like, maybe some sort of bar that a city or a friendship city has to kind of go out, like live up to. And if it doesn't, then maybe it means that we should restructure it, right? Retire them, or I don't know. Or have a graduation party or something like that. So I think that makes sense. But okay, good. So I think we covered all 5 questions that staff wanted. Now we just have to, staff, you guys want a motion? Is that right for this?
this item, if there's a recommendation from the committee, should go back to the full council. The
Okay.
full council sent it your way.
Okay, so we've had kind of a wide-ranging discussion here. Do either one of my colleagues want to try to see if we could craft a motion? And
Staff had asked these questions to get us thinking, but what exactly was the referral? I know it's in here and I read it, and I mean, what exactly do we need to tell them?
Just a second.
Yeah, I'm looking too.
Okay, so at the June 19th City Council meeting, the council voted to refer the colleagues memo of approval of a sister city program to policy and services for further discussion and to review the staffing impacts of the program. The colleagues memo itself had the recommendation of approval of a sister city. So you can send back any feedback, friendship city. You can send back any feedback that you will have on the creation of a program. I believe in the original colleagues memo, they gave a sample document. They gave a sample agreement document, but you all would be giving information that would help the city council if they were moving forward, the full council moving forward with the program.
So presumably it could be recommend council approve a friendship city program with the following add-ons or criteria, however you'd like to define it.
So for example, in the draft agreement, they have remain in effect for, they said 3 years. We could do that or change it. Agreement may be extended upon mutual agreement. So those are kind of baked in, and we could add any other bells and whistles that we've discussed.
you're welcome to make a motion.
Okay, I will move that we recommend to council the establishment of a friendship city program, and that the program contemplates.
Can the clerk please put this on the screen, please?
And okay, establish a friendship city program that shall be reevaluated within 3 years, and that any friendship city agreements entered shall expire within 3 years from execution, absent mutual agreement to extend, period. And that in that first 3-year time period, no more than 2 friendship cities shall be, what's the verb? Thank you, established. And that the provisions suggested in the colleagues memo related to, find it, 1 second. I'm on the wrong page, but basically related to the volunteer taking primary responsibility, and that it otherwise comport with the neighbor abroad policy be followed. And I'm going to stop there and see if my colleagues have friendly amendments about staff time.
Did you, you also had a really good idea, which I think we both supported, about having sort of sunset. Did you want to put something in there about that? Or you could call it
Well,
a graduation or something?
I think that I would like for, I don't know that we're ready to do that now. I would like to hear from neighbors abroad and ask the deputy city manager to think about recommendations for sunsetting. I don't know enough about the relationships to say much, but I would like to explore that. I don't want to add to your workload, but
That was just on sister cities, right?
yeah,
And this is
Yeah.
on friendship cities.
right. But is that what you're?
Well, I just thought you had a good idea, which was you're being very sensitive to adding without taking off extra work from city staff, and you were suggesting some sort of sunset / graduation idea, and I think that's a great idea. So I just wanted to encourage you to put something down.
No, I like the idea. I just don't know that we're ready to make a motion on it, that we know enough about it. I would like it to be explored, and
Maybe just ask staff to explore it and come back with a recommendation.
That could be, what I don't see in the motion is related to the evaluation after 3 years. So if you wanted to include that of and evaluate existing sister city relationships or something, that just offering that out there, maybe, is that where you're thinking about? Because it's at that point of whether you say, oh, look, we love them, can we keep them? That is going to matter.
yeah, so maybe it's direct staff to evaluate current sister city relationships and potential processes for transitioning those relationships to a friendship city relationship, or potentially, I don't want to say end or terminate. What's a good word? Or other staffs, period.
And for context, there's not a lot of inactive sister city relationships. So just for context, you're not going to gain efficiencies of 4 of 8, it would be 1, maybe 2.
Did you want to put in something about trying to have like not an impact on without some sort of explicit trade, like you were saying, like like if there's some sort of bogus film festival we're funding that's less worthy than this. I forgot what you exactly said, but something like that.
For the record, I did not say bogus film festival. Just want to make that very clear.
Or whatever. I can't remember the name of the film festival you mentioned, but whatever that was.
Yeah, I was just trying to give an example of other things that were culture related services we provide to our residents. I'm trying to find, hold on. So but I think, Chair, you were talking about impact on staff, right? You wanted to get that in
just
here?
trying to be sensitive. that, staff always says you have too much and we're piling more stuff on. So I think to be fair to staff, I think we've all had people that work for us, and when we have someone that's working for us and tell they're overloaded and we give more stuff to them, it never goes well. At least that's been my experience.
I understand the issue, and we would have to decide that it warranted more staff or that we need to skinny it down, which is what I'm trying to find the language and completely failing here. But because I had thought that Neighbors Abroad was trying to shoulder more of this, was my sense. And but I take your point, Deputy City Manager, that the other cities may still reach out to you. And so, but that's why I was trying to limit it to the number of, did I get in here the number of trips?
That's not included.
That's
at
not in here
present.
yet. We could do it that way. Is that one of the biggest burdens when you have delegations come that you have to host?
That is a bigger time suck if it is multiple days or if it requires multiple staff to be in the presentations with them, or the preparation to just make sure that the delegations are received well.
Because in between, is there much you have to do in between delegation visits?
It varies, but it's, for individual cities, it may not be a lot in between the visits.
Mhm.
Collectively, there's always something.
So I'm wondering if we could get at it more objectively by just limiting the number of delegation visits.
And for context, with our existing sister cities, we don't have a visit each year. So
Right.
it's giving a friendship city 1 to 2 visits per year is actually very generous, I think is what I'm trying to share.
Why don't we say one annual visit? And they probably won't, I mean, I mean, these are budget issues for a lot of people. I know domestically, it's all out of people's own pockets. So I think one is plenty. Can we, so no more than 2 friendship. So should we just add into A? That no more than one delegation visit, the city shall host no more than one delegation visit per year per friendship city? And it may not even be one.
So for me, I'm not, as I mentioned, I'm not so particular on a number because I don't know what the right number is, and I'm not sure the staff even knows. And so for me, and my colleague, our other committee member may not agree with this, but my opinion is more just that I hear staff crying out for mercy, right? And I just don't think we should keep piling stuff on. So if they can handle it and it's not going to impact any other program or take away from just some other things, or there's really something else that we could say we don't do anymore, then I'm fine with this. But if this is going to cause extra work for staff, I think staff needs like a relief valve, so to speak, where if this is going to start impacting other programs that we also told them are priorities, then I think we either have to make those other programs go away and do this, or we need to, Neighbor Broad steps up. But whatever the case is, I'm very flexible on this as long as it doesn't impact staff or other resources to the city. But that's my opinion, and my fellow committee member may not agree, may agree with you. I don't know. So, but that's where I'm coming from.
I think the most important words in here are no more than 2 friendship cities shall be established. And that cap helps put some limitation on it. And we don't expect, 5 delegations per year. We already know that. So if we're going to add any work, then capping it like this is the way to do it. And putting sort of these things on a pilot basis for the new ones, I think is also correct.
Okay. Did you want to second the motion?
You can.
Well, actually, I mean, I can only second this motion if it didn't have an impact to staff, and I don't know if there's the votes for that or there's a willingness to do something like that. And if there is, I could second it. But if there isn't, I probably will not vote for this.
Let me just speak to that for a minute. How can there not be? I mean, it's a
Yeah,
city program or it's not. If it's a city program, it necessarily takes staff time. It's whether or not we're going to minimize that to a degree that is livable with the current resources staff has. But if we're not going to put any city resources to this, we should not do this program. It is a friend of city. It's an official thing. To say it's name only and we don't care enough to put anything toward it is not something I would support.
Well, I guess maybe the part that I didn't say very clearly is it could take staff resources, but I think we have to, as council, be willing to take something else off. We just can't simply say, do more and more and more without saying, oh, well, we could do this, but that means we'll take something else off the plate. Because I think staff has said it so many times, I don't know if they could say it more clearly, but I don't think they have capacity to do extra right now.
Well, there's another way to think about it, and I don't know that we can get in the motion tonight. And maybe the deputy city manager has some thoughts on this. It could be that the sister cities collectively only have X, that we talk to neighbors abroad about, because I think when you say for them to step up, I mean, they're a nonprofit with limited budgets, just like us, more so. But they might be willing to say, okay, collectively in a year for a city this size, we're going to do this many things. And, I don't know, I have no idea what the number is, but, X delegations per year for all of them or something. That way it's not collectively taking more from staff, but I don't know without talking to them. I mean, if that's something we have to know, maybe the deputy city manager does, but that's another way to do this.
Okay, well, I mean, that's where I stand. You and I may not, I mean, I largely agree with this, except for that I want that relief valve for staff, and you may have to vote to still move forward. So do you want to second the motion?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, so I think I unfortunately cannot support this because of, I hear staff say very loudly and clearly that there's resource issues. And so while in general, I like the idea of what this is trying to do, I think that I don't feel like we are making the hard decisions that staff needs us to make to tell them what's less important or how to make something like this happen. And we're just adding more to their plate without helping. So anyways, but we could agree to disagree, and that's okay. And so any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll ask the clerk to take the vote.
Mr. Chair, I have one question. In letter C, is the intention that that evaluation is happening near the end of this 3-year pilot? I just wanted to clarify what the intent is of the committee with letter C.
My thought would be that you do that whenever you have bandwidth, not necessarily wait, but I know you wouldn't this year. But I think it's also something we should talk to neighbors abroad about. Yeah, does that?
That's helpful. Just wanted to make sure the expectation wasn't tomorrow, because it won't be tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Done.
Okay, can the clerk please take the vote?
Councilmember Vinker,
Yes.
Chair Tanaka,
No.
Councilmember Lowing,
Yes.
motion carries 2-1.
Okay, so that closes item 2. Let's go to item 3. Actually, let me ask my colleagues. We've been at it for a bit. Should we power through or should we take a quick break? What do you guys prefer?
Power through.
Power-
If the staff's okay, we should check with them.
Staff okay? Are you okay? Okay, we're going to power through here. So item 3, does staff have a presentation you'd like to review?
Yes, I'll open it up and then give it over to City Attorney Stump. This is another follow-up related to the referrals for your procedures and protocols handbook. And the 2 that we specifically are bringing back to you today relate to censure, taking into account edits that you all shared when we brought this a couple months ago. And the second one is international travel, bringing back language based off of the suggestions that came from this committee in April. So Ms. Stump will walk us through the censure and I'll walk us through international travel.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Cotton Gaines. So this censure policy, originally council asked for that in the procedures and protocols, and there was a relatively brief a set of paragraphs there, and council asked this committee to work on expanding and fleshing out and refining that. We did bring an initial discussion draft to you a few months ago based on gathering comparisons from other cities, and you gave us some good feedback. And so what's before you tonight in Exhibit A is a proposed revision that addresses those items and also just cleans up and clarifies, I think, the draft. So this is again before you for discussion and feedback. And if we get it to a place where you're ready to recommend it to council, then we'll put it in that bucket. So Chair Tanaka, what I would propose to do is just to begin to walk through this, and you or the committee can interrupt to discuss, or you can let me sort of walk through quickly the main sections as you wish.
What I prefer you do is that you walk through each change briefly and then allow us to comment on it. And that way we keep the thread, and, maybe the most stuff we'll, hopefully agree. And then the parts that we disagree, we could discuss it, deliberate, and then hopefully come with some sort of direction for you.
Very good.
Okay, so why don't you go, pause, and then we could comment on it.
Super. So first of all, starting with the overall structure. When we brought the language to you last time, we were just focusing on the centerpiece, but we went back and looked, and this centerpiece actually follows two other sections that are helpful to see in context. So this whole thing together is section 8. And you have these two pieces that are existing language, section 8.1 and 8.2, which aren't about censure. Okay, so the whole section 8 is about review enforcement. So section 8.1, I do propose, we are proposing to you some changes here. This is annual review and update of the handbook. So the paragraph explains that the handbook should be reviewed annually and that updates can be made. There was some actually internally contradictory language. In one place, the procedure said that PNS would do the updates, and in others, it said that the council would do it. And so what I've proposed here for your review is that PNS initiates the review and update and makes recommendations to council, of course, and that council then reviews those recommendations and approves updates as appropriate. And then item 8.2, and then I'll pause for questions, is a separate but related idea, which is a commitment to follow the procedures. So let's see, Madam Clerk, let's see if I can see, we see the whole of 8.2 there? This simply says that the procedures are council adopting rules for yourselves. And so you're committing to read them and to follow them. And then we get to the procedures for enforcement. So the idea is, first of all, review and amendment, commitment to follow, and then we get to enforcement, which I think makes more sense to see that in context. So going to 8.3 then. We've added some introductory language.
Maybe just, I think there's probably nothing that my colleagues have on this, but just in case for 8.1, 8.2, any thoughts, comments, questions? Otherwise, we'll go into 3.
Yeah, I don't have anything until 8.3B.
Okay.
I just want to say overall, I think this revision is great. It's really substantially, I mean, the first was pretty good too, but now I think we're there. It's really good. And I love that you have a section on committing to follow the procedures. So first rate on that as well.
Okay,
Good.
so why don't you go ahead and
Okay,
go through
super.
8.3.
So 8.3, so we've added some introductory language there, those first two paragraphs. This was the committee asked for this, which is, if there's a problem, start at the lowest level possible with a one-on-one conversation where possible. So it's flexible. It does allow for the situation where it's not possible, but if it is, start with a one-on-one conversation or through the mayor. And then the second paragraph says, if needed, then this can proceed to a more formal process. So then we get to paragraph A, purpose, which was existing language. And then, Madam Clerk, if you scroll down to section B. So the committee pointed out that there was repetition in the prior draft. So what we've done is we've pulled these 3 ideas forward into a definition section. So we can just refer then to the word and not repeat the substance. So these are the three conceptual types of enforcement: admonition, informal reprimand, and direction to correct, which is a combination of two of them that the committee asked us to put those together into one. And then the third is a formal resolution of censure. And there's a little bit of language there to provide more context and explanation of what these things are, so that the reader kind of understands where they might be appropriate. Councilmember Tanaka, do we want to pause there or keep going?
I think my colleague had some thoughts or questions. I don't know if you also have something, but why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Yeah, and I concur with Councilmember allowing. This is exactly what we hope to have brought back. So thank you so much. Just a couple, these are just minor points. I don't disagree with anything substantively I see. I just can't help myself, so. Just the heading for B, definitions. The content of 1, 2, and 3 is excellent, but it feels like a lot more than definitions. They have procedures in them. So I would just respectfully suggest that we relabel this section simply disciplinary actions. But that's a style thing. I will leave to you. In 1, the admonition paragraph, there's a sentence in the middle of it that reads, an admonition may be issued by the city council prior to a formal investigation or any findings of fact regarding allegations. Because even, we talked about how rare these things are last time, at least we hope they are, and we don't want them to be used politically and all of that. I'm wondering whether we could restate that sentence to say, while an admonition may be issued by the city council prior to a formal investigation or any findings of fact regarding allegations, comma, a significant factual basis should exist before issuing an admonition. Because even though we aren't going to invest, it's kind of like a prima facie case. If it was a legal document, we'd say prima facie case, but it's a policy manual, so we won't. But something like that, I don't know if significant is quite the right word, but some sort of factual basis should exist before issuing an admonition. I would like to have that in there. And then lastly on admonition, in the last sentence, I think there's just a typo, and it says, in general, however, council will provide its members with an opportunity to respond to before taking any action. I would suggest to insert the alleged violation, so it would read, opportunity to respond to the alleged violation before taking any action. So those are my comments on 1, and I think I actually didn't have any on 2 or 3. So that's all I have for that section.
Okay. Did you have any comments on what we've gone through?
No, other than I knew that if Councilmember Vinker went first, she would find the typo before I did. So.
There are a few more typos I sprinkled in here just to test you,
check us.
Councilmember Pinker. I think those are all excellent edits, and I've copied them down.
Thank you.
Okay. So I agree with my committee member on this one. Makes sense. And I just want to just try to make sure I understand this. So resolution for a censure. I mean, if you step back, and because I think I asked this last time, and I just the language, I'm just trying to make sure this language is clear. But so let's say there's a resolution for censure or reprimand, or all 3 things happen. Because the council member is elected, they could resign, but they don't have to. I mean, I'm just saying there's no, other than maybe publicity, no real effect that this has, right?
Yes, the sanctions, we listed a couple of sanctions, relatively minor. You're correct that a council member who's elected maintains their seat. And a decision to resign would be entirely that council member's decision.
Yeah, okay, so removal committee, but there's formal committees that you can't really move people from. I guess there are restrictions related to travel privileges, but that's about it, right?
I don't know whether council might have other ideas given the circumstances that may come up. So I can't exhaustively answer that, But you're correct, your initial observation is correct, that an elected council member cannot be removed by their peers.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I mean, of course, the public could, right? The public could do a recall, right? So that makes sense. They could do that because we report to the public, not to each other. So now I like the idea that, this should not be a political thing because certainly this could be used as a political tool. And so that's why I like my committee members' suggestion that there has to be some basis of fact, right? And I think we're trying to do that to avoid this to use this as a political tool. Like, well, I disagree with that person, so we're gonna try to like dox them, right? So I think that's, we don't want to use that. This shouldn't be a tool for that kind of stuff, right? Shouldn't be a political tool. And I don't think anyone here want that. So I'm just trying to, well, there's not a lot of teeth to it. There's a lot of formality to this, and I'm just trying to think of like, how do we make sure that disagreements, because we do have disagreements, right? That's only the case, aren't used to say, well, hey, I disagree with that person, so we're gonna put them through this process here. How do we prevent that kind of action? I don't know if the city attorney has any insight on this.
That's really a question for council to determine in terms of how you treat your colleagues. The whole idea of a censure policy was not a staff initiative. It was council that asked for this.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm asking staff more about how do we prevent this? Because I personally believe that city council works because we don't agree with each other. We will sit here and debate ideas, and we want to have a robust debate. We want to be able to disagree with each other, and there shouldn't be political backlash for disagreeing. I think we don't serve the people well. I think the people are served well when there's a diversity of opinion, perspectives, and a robust discussion. And so I want to make sure that this doesn't become a political tool for, future councils, right? To silence people, to prevent the discussion of ideas. And so that's the one thing that I'm looking at this, and I'm just trying to think of, because I could see it going that direction too. I don't think anyone here on this council right now necessarily is intending for this, but I could see that happening. And so I wonder what kind of safeguards can we have to prevent that kind of action from happening. So I don't know if the city attorney has any suggestions on something like that.
What's included here is a robust process of opportunity to be heard. And that's what cities generally do to ensure that there's a full opportunity to respond. Beyond that, Councilmember Tanaka, I would just say that the city does not have to have a censure program, and it doesn't have to use a censure program, and it's really up to the council to determine that.
I think we did discuss this last time, and it's absolutely not intended to get after, a political opponent on an issue. It was more around issues of behavior and conduct. And one comment I think from last time was if someone, council member, stands up and makes racial statements that, we don't stand for as a city, and they could be censured for something like that. So I think it's more the behavioral approach to things. It's not, political or prior votes or anything like that.
Yeah, and I see that says that particular type of behavior is in violation of law, city policy. But what someone might consider as inappropriate behavior, maybe just someone's differing opinion. And so because there's not a really clear, like, and what I'm getting at here is the minority viewpoint, right? So so I think that because of the way this policy is structured right now is really majority rules. So the majority, if they don't like the minority, they could just censure them, say, oh, bad behavior, they're censured, right? Now, the good news about this is that there's actually limited power that this has, but still, it's, the optics don't look good. So that's my main concern. I don't know if you have any thoughts about this.
I do. We can't keep people from using it. just like we can't keep people from abusing, any process, other than having the same kind of sanctions available to them. Here we have a majority that it would require to actually abuse the process. And one would hope that if that happened, that our community would make them pay. We've seen it run amok, I believe, in our Congress. We've had more impeachment trials in the last however long than in the many years preceding that. But we also have a public who has views on that. And so I think that we can't necessarily control how it's used, but our residents can by voting for us or not. And, at the end of the day, one hopes that we will use this well. And the alternative to taking that risk is to not have one at all. And what worries me in this day and age is not being able to admonish someone for racial epithets or other inappropriate behavior, because we haven't seen it here in Palo Alto yet, but we have seen behavior in public meetings of late that we're just not used to seeing. And these are pretty mild at the end of the day as to what can be done, to your point. It's more of an embarrassment. And if the embarrassment seems unjust in the eyes of our residents, then they'll view it that way. So I think it's important what Molly said, safeguards about having a hearing, having an opportunity to be heard, to defend oneself, to present the other side of the story is really the best way to go about this.
So, one thing that might make this better, so I wanted to, maybe it's in here already. And I think we talked about it, but maybe I might be jumping sections here, so tell me, City Attorney, if I am. But it was about the number of votes needed, right? Like a supermajority. Like for instance, 6 people, not as usual 4. So is that somewhere in here?
It is,
okay.
council member, and that is another element of safeguard. Thank you for raising that. That's in section D, disciplinary action. It's towards the end.
Okay, so let's not jump ahead then. Let's talk about when we get there. Why don't you keep on going?
Yes. Okay, so now we're beginning on section C, below definitions, and some new language was added really to try to capture some comments made by the committee, just to frame this and to describe the council's intentions, which are to reach an accurate decision that's appropriate under the circumstances, to act expeditiously, and to be fair. And then there is language that you've reviewed before in paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4 that's largely unchanged. That goes through the process that a council member could use to initiate this process. So then I would like to skip over that language because it's essentially the same. We can go back to it if there are questions or comments, but Madam Clerk, if you could go down to subparagraph 5. So in subparagraph 5, there is an option here for the council to, if initial steps yield a desire for a formal investigation, there's an option for the council to designate an ad hoc committee to oversee that. And actually, in addition to this language, that new language that's been drafted, I think the language needs to be adjusted a little bit to reflect that the council can decide what the ad hoc committee's scope is. In other words, the ad hoc committee could, first of all, the council doesn't need to establish one. If council does, it can say ad hoc committee, go hire someone to do an investigation, or could also say to the ad hoc committee, and you ad hoc committee make a recommendation about the result. Right? So an investigation finds what happened, and then the result is what to do about it. And council should decide, have the flexibility to decide. We don't want a recommendation. We want that to come, the investigation to come back to the full council. Full council will decide what to do. Or do you want the ad hoc committee to make a recommendation on that what to do part? So that's an additional tweak to the language that I recommend making from what's here. Okay, then we can move on to paragraph 6.
Just wanted to stop here. Did my
Yes.
colleagues have any comments, thoughts, suggestions on what's been discussed so far?
Yes, but they're further back. And on, so maybe just on 5.
Yeah, what you
So
could
what
go.
was this,
Yeah,
the
yeah, please.
additional language, Molly? I'm sorry.
The new language is in purple, but just in reviewing this over the weekend, I think that what I would recommend also adding, Councilmember Vinger, is in the second to the last sentence where it says the ad hoc committee shall review the findings of the investigation and arrive at a recommendation. I think it should say, if directed by the council, the ad hoc committee shall review the findings of the investigation and arrive at a recommendation.
I don't feel strongly about that either way, I guess, because if the council isn't fully informed on the recommendation, on the investigation, might be kind of hard, and it's just a recommendation. So I just feel strongly either way. I don't know what my colleagues think.
I think okay the way it is, frankly.
It's so subtle, I didn't quite. So I didn't quite catch the, so city attorney, so, can you kind of explain the nuance or like why the change, like what's the purpose?
To provide flexibility for council to decide later in light of the specific circumstances, what you want the ad hoc committee to do.
So what was wrong with leaving it the way it is? Because don't they already have that flexibility?
It's directive the way it is, that if an ad hoc committee is established, then it would make a recommendation.
I think what the city attorney is saying is that perhaps, given the nature of a particular investigation, that it might be council wants to review the findings in full as a body, as opposed to having the ad hoc do it. Is that?
Which they still could, the way it's written.
Yes, which they still will, and they would, the recommendation would only be a recommendation.
Right, so they still have that option. It doesn't preclude them the way it's
Yeah,
written.
but they don't have the option not to, is what she's saying, like, unless we said if directed by council.
Right.
I'm happy to put it in. I don't.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't have a strong opinion at all. But one thing I wanted to clarify is, so in this proposed changes that you're have here, does this give the council, because I think if we don't, even if we did nothing here, couldn't the council do the same exact thing already? It's already within its legal power to take a vote and do the same exact thing already? Is it?
Probably. This provides structure in advance so that everyone knows what the steps will be.
Okay, but I mean, oh, what do you think could not have been done without these changes?
Oh, I'm sorry, these changes that,
We don't even have censure now, right?
Well, no, but you could still censure. You could still, as a council, vote, say, we're gonna censure that person. I don't think we have to have a censure process.
But the process might look political and.
Well, it could be, yeah. could
I
be
mean,
that.
when you set up a process in the midst of a specific situation, people think that you game the process because of the outcome you want in that instance, as opposed to now when there's no instance on the table.
It could be that too, yeah. But I'm just saying that the council could say, oh, we're gonna censure this person. We don't like them. We're gonna censure them, right? And I mean, is that not the case? Or what additional powers is this giving the council to do its action that it didn't already have?
it's actually, I think, actually limiting the council by setting up a structure and a set of steps that council will follow.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you keep on going?
Okay.
I just had one comment on this section. You've added language that talks about proceeding as promptly as possible, which I think is really good. And we chatted about that last time, and I think the wording here captures that.
Thank you.
I have a couple really minor things. Do you want me to do them now?
Yes.
Yes, it is. It is. paragraph C, the last sentence there, it says, in all cases, an opportunity to be heard will be afforded to any council member who may be subject to discipline. But for admonition, it's not necessarily, even though we encouraged it.
So your suggestion is to call out that,
You could say in the cases of whatever the informal reprimand and censure, an opportunity we
I
heard,
see.
or we could add just mandatory for admonition, but I just think it's inconsistent with B. That,
Yes, that's a fair point. Let's say, subject to informal reprimand or censure.
yes, good. And then another just highly significant comment at the end of subparagraph 1 there, where it says proposed disciplinary actions may include admonition, informal reprimand, direction to correct, or censure. Can we say and or, just because I think informal reprimand and direction to correct could be coupled together?
Yes.
Thank you. And then in little paragraph 2, just at the top of the next page, if a colleague's memo proposes censure or other discipline of a council member, I would think we could just say if a colleague's memo proposes discipline. I don't know why we're calling out censure necessarily.
So here's the reason for that language. I acknowledge that it's not perfectly clear and it can be improved. It might be in this colleagues memo process that it's more general than that. Like, two colleagues might raise a concern that's not focused on a particular council member about some type of conduct that might not be discipline, in which case you don't need to articulate, and there may not be specific charges, right? But whereas if you're identifying a person who's alleged to have violated a written law or policy, which is another limiting factor of this procedure, right? It can't just be, we don't like him, as Chair Tanaka mentioned. It has to be a violation of written law or policy. So if you're identifying a particular person who's alleged to have violated, you need to say that. That's what this is saying. You have to be specific about that. So your suggestion is to say if a colleague's memo proposes
Discipline.
discipline, that, I think that's a good change.
Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to make it consistent with the heading up above. Okay, then I think I'm caught up. Thank you.
Okay, so let's keep moving here. I know this is
Actually,
a
sorry,
little tedious.
I got inspired, so.
Okay.
Let me just, so is, I want to clarify, so for admonition, let's see.
Where are you reading?
Oh, sorry, package 25 again, definitions. Okay, it says on line 3, violation of law or city policy. And then on 2, it says determines violates law or city policy. And then 3, it says, okay, so I guess what I'm trying to get at is this tool's meant to be, when this is more of a mechanical language question here. This is trying to be when there's a violation of law or policy, right? Either 1, 2, or 3, or all combination of them can be triggered. Is that what this is trying to say?
Yes.
Okay, because the way I was just thinking it on 3, it doesn't have that if it's in violation of law or policy, city policy. But 1 and 2 has it, but 3 doesn't have it. So should that be in top on B? Just a little bit more of a lawyer question for you guys. But if that's the case, should that not? It's in violation of law or policy B at the B section, not the sub 1 section. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I like that comment. So currently it's in paragraph C1, which says, should two or more council members believe that actions by a council member inconsistent with federal or state law or this handbook or any other document adopted by council, then they can get the process started. But I agree with you that that statement actually should be made earlier. And so I'll pull that up and put that at the beginning of B.
Okay, so B would be something to the effect of, and I don't know the law enough to kind of know exactly what, and so is in violation of law or city policy. Should it be beyond the reasonable doubt? Or like what's the standard of violation of law or city policy?
So that is also a good question, and it's addressed at the end.
Okay,
For
then
the
let's
first, yeah, okay.
let's wait till we get to that. Okay, let's keep going.
Just a minute, let me make a note for myself about those, pull that language up.
Also, just a time check for us. We're at 9:40, and normally I think we're scheduled for about 10 o'clock. So if there might be a need for staff to do a few revisions and get back to us, so we may have to continue or we may have to go overtime, but that's something for us to think about.
Okay, we are now on little paragraph 6, C6. So there are some minor changes that have been made here, but this is all procedural timelines, et cetera, you've reviewed before. And so I don't propose to go over it in detail. There is one additional change I would suggest to small paragraph 9, which is not marked here. So in paragraph 9, there is the word accusers, and I think it's more accurate and less confrontational to use the word witnesses instead of accusers. I would suggest that we make that change.
What page?
27.
Can the clerk
I can't
highlight that for
find
us,
where
please?
There is also a typo in that paragraph. It says witness when it should say witnesses. So I will fix that.
I don't know if my colleagues see that, but I don't see it.
Do you need to see the typo?
No, I was asking the clerk to highlight it, but I don't know if the clerk found it yet either. But
But we don't need the clerk to make a final document here, Chair Tanaka. If we agree on, and it seems like so far we are, subject to a final vote, I can make these changes.
The accusers versus witnesses.
Yes.
I agree with you that accusers feels a little uncomfortable. But could there be an accuser who's not a witness? And then the accused doesn't get a chance to kind of question them? Are they?
Well, not much of an accuser if you don't have personal knowledge, frankly, but I guess so. Yeah. I think we would consider that person to be a witness then, or a generous. We wouldn't use the technical lawyers for the definition of a witness, but someone who has relevant information. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm not sure what a better word would be. I mean, complainant.
We could say that, complainant or witnesses. Yeah. Okay, so we're almost done. This is tedious, but we're almost done. So we're on small d now, disciplinary action. So Councilmember Tanaka, here's your 2/3 vote. The committee directed this last time. So this is another procedural safeguard. It's a higher bar to taking action.
I did have a question on that.
I do
Yes.
too, but you go ahead.
It may be the same
Quite the
question.
same
I don't know.
question. Go ahead.
But is it 2/3 of the council, not including the one who's accused?
No,
Really?
not as written. So 2/3, so every council member has an opportunity to vote. It is a,
Right, but the accused is most likely going to vote in favor of him or herself.
okay.
And if
so-
we're raising the bar to 2/3, I think my thinking when I talked about it was that it should be of the remaining council members. Otherwise, you end up having the accused only has to find one council member that's going to vote for him or her and the game's over.
I think if you had a supermajority of 6, it's the same as 7. You're still at 4 council members.
2/3 of 6 is 4.
Right.
Right, and 2/3 of 7 is
Yeah.
4.
Correct. You have to round up because you
Can't have a partial person.
I thought 2/3 of 7 is 5 if you round up.
Yes,
Am I-
it is actually.
So I think it's a difference between 4 or 5.
So that's why it has to be the,
Yeah. It makes a difference.
So 4 is a simple majority of council or 2/3 of the council members. So Councilmember Lang, here's the issue, and it goes back to Councilmember Tanaka's initial comment that once a council member is elected by the people, you hold that seat and you have a right to vote on every item that comes before council, and your colleagues cannot remove your right to vote on an item. So I think you need to pick your voting threshold based on the understanding that every council member will vote.
What concerns me about that is what if there were 2 bad actors on council? Or I shouldn't say two accused on council. And I'd hope there wouldn't be 3, but that makes it an awful lot harder to get the whole vote, which maybe is okay, but
Yeah, I think we should look at these case studies and then back into the number. And if you're not going to allow the one who's being accused to essentially recuse, then I think we should go back to a majority, because that still would require, so that at that point, 4 of the 6 that are not accused, which my math says that is 2/3. So
I think, City Attorney, you look at other cities. I don't know on this particular point, if you remember at this point what all they did, but do you happen to know if,
I don't, I'd
Yeah.
have to go back and look. We provided the links, but I did not review the
Yeah,
other cities' policies.
nor did I. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So I think
I
so
didn't see
we-
that in any of the links.
The council, neither the council, certainly not the staff, can require a recusal on this item unless there's a financial conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act. Which is hard
So
to
if we-
imagine.
So if we take that, if it's the case that we can't require recusal, then, majority thing becomes more attractive for that reason. But
Yeah,
I'm
'cause-
wondering if that's out of step with everybody else. It would be interesting to know.
My recollection of reading the 4 links, I thought were all majority votes. But I'm not going to tell you that particularly that long one that had all their policy and procedures. I think it was Oakland. I didn't read every one of their policy and procedures on how to vote and stuff, but
We gave you a pin site on that to help you find it.
yeah. So I just think it makes more sense for what we're trying to do here to say that we want the majority of the non-voting, of the non-accused. That would be a majority if we're going to do it the way you're suggesting. So in other words, in this language, I would be interested in changing it back to majority of council.
And that's a policy decision. It's whatever the committee directs.
I'm comfortable with going with that as a recommendation to our full council.
Right.
And then looking more carefully at the comparisons when we get there.
And explaining the reason for it.
Yes.
And we now at least have 2 case studies. You brought up one, which there could be 2, as you said, bad actors or collusion, where we were talking about corner cases tonight. Or there could be 1, but has someone who is always loyal on every issue, a political ally coming back to the political problem, which would interfere with a rational vote based on true evidence.
Okay, so do you guys have any other thoughts on this?
On D2, but I'm not sure if we got there.
No, let's do this first. Okay, so let me share my thoughts. Like I said earlier, I think it's really important to preserve the ability to disagree, and I think our democracy and our people are served best that way. And so I believe the bar should be really high, because we don't want this to be used as a political tool. I don't think anyone here wants this to be used as a political tool. And so it should be very hard to do this, because if it's very easy, we're like, don't like you today, we're gonna send you today because we don't like how you voted on that, don't like how you said that, or we don't like your opinion. I think that's not a good functioning democracy. I think we function best when there is disagreement, and we can allow disagreement, when we can allow diversity of opinion. And I think that's important to our democracy, important to our city, and important to our people. So I think we had it right with this before. I realize that I'm definitely in the minority here on this one, so it is what it is. But I think you guys also have to think about, I certainly know on council today, I'm definitely in the minority on the housing issue. I get that. I'm definitely in the minority. But when I got elected, I was in the majority. So you also have to think about, one day you might, while you may feel like you're in the majority today, you might not be in the majority next term, right? Or 2 years. You never know. And I think we want to preserve our independence, our ability to fight for what we believe is best for the people of our city, and don't want this to be a political tool. Let me ask staff, how often, or how many times in our 125 years plus history has Palo Alto actually censored anyone? Can staff tell me?
Well, certainly not since 2011, when I've been serving the city. I'm not aware of a time before that. There may have been one.
Okay, so it's been a long time then. We have a very, very active community. Our community is probably more active than pretty much any other city. And, people are pretty watchful. So, I wonder how much of this has been done by the council versus the people, right? If someone's really out of line, they'll get recalled. And that's real removal, right? This is more political, in my opinion. So I think we tread on thin ice here when we make it easy to censure a colleague, because I mean, this is the other part, which I guess we'll get to in a bit here, is what is that bar? Is it just colleague's opinion, or is it really a clear, factual, beyond reasonable doubt, a violation of law and policy? Because it seems like this is more of just a political vote. There's not a finding. There's no factual finding. There's no independent body, a jury, a disinterested jury make a decision. This is a very biased party that doesn't like a colleague for whatever opinion they may have, and it's a political decision. So that's why I think this bar has to be pretty high. But I realize that I probably stand in minority on this one. So, but you want to say something?
Yes, so since you welcome disagreement, I will
Go for it.
take your welcome.
And I will encourage it. So please, guys, go for it.
Right, but I think you're missing the core point here, which is that it is evidentiary based. It's not an allocation that's not supported by evidence. If someone's accused of, my example before, of racial bigotry, and there's a video of some person doing that, that's the evidence. And I would hope that in some random case where somebody agrees with that person all the time, in that case, they'll make an exception and say, you're going to keep your seat, but for that violation of our protocols, then I'm going to have to vote for censure for that case. And I tried to make the point that we don't want it to be political by my comment, saying that what could make this very political is only one other council member other than the accused could turn this into a non-censure, because if it's majority. So this is very evidentiary based. It's not politically based. It's not based on who's in the majority on any one issue. And your example of a housing issue is sort of like, well, first of all, there's about 50 different ones, but I don't think that a position on housing has anything to do with racial bigotry. So that's the distinction, I think, is the basis of, a possible censure. And it's too easy. You say it's too easy. It's too easy now for one person to just go over and support that person that's accused. And that was my concern.
Well, I guess if this was really evidentiary based, where there was 12 people selected who had nothing to do with anyone involved in the case, and there were lawyers arguing the facts, and there's a reasonable, proof beyond the reasonable doubt type of thing going on, I would agree with you. I'm actually okay with that. And probably the vote of the jury is fine, but that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is there's 7 of us. Each of us are, we ran for our own political agenda, which may or may not agree with others. And Molly or city attorney, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we vote however we feel like. There's no mandate that we have to vote based on any fact. Is that correct? Or is it's just a pure vote, is from what I understand by reading this?
For legislative items, which is most of what you do, but for quasi judicial items, then you do need to make your decisions based on the evidence that's before council.
Okay, so we make the evidence, but that's just our personal opinion.
Excuse me, one more time?
If that's just our personal opinion, we say, oh, I believe this is what the fact is, but there's no independence.
There is a legal requirement that the evidence needs to connect to the findings that council makes based on the substantial evidence standard. And so so you referred to beyond a reasonable doubt in your comments. So in the American political system, that particular standard, which is extremely high, applies only in the criminal context, which is when someone is subject to imprisonment or criminal fines. So it really isn't, there's no way in which it's relevant in an administrative proceeding. What's proposed here is higher than the preponderance of the evidence, which is 50% and a little bit. What's proposed for censure is clear and convincing evidence, which is the next one up, but not as far as beyond a reasonable doubt. So that's another procedural safeguard, if you will.
Okay, I guess I don't understand because it's us voting on this, and we could say it's clear, convincing to me, so that's how I vote. But you're saying that we have a legal obligation. So how does that legal obligation, let's say for instance, someone says, I believe the sky is green, okay? And, when I look at it, it's green, but, other people say, no, it's blue. So what happens is like, the judge says, oh, no, sorry, you're just got it wrong. It's actually blue. I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand, how does the quasi-judicial, how does that go into effect?
Okay, so now I think we need to focus a little bit. So I mentioned quasi-judicial in to answer your previous question, but that really has to do with land use decisions and where there's a right of a third party. And that's actually not what applies here. And in the quasi-judicial circumstance, there's the potential to take a writ to Superior Court and to get into the formal legal system. So you are correct that this is an administrative procedure proceeding that involves some judgment of your colleagues. So there's a structure laid out here, but council members will bring their judgment to bear on it. That's correct.
Yeah, so it's just our opinion, and there's not a factual standard to the law or policy that we have to do. And that's why I think it should be pretty high, because, hey, maybe, the majority feels they could get political advantage and it becomes a political tool. And I don't think that's what we want Palo Alto to be. We want Palo Alto, we want us, the people elected, to have a robust debate, be able to disagree and move forward, and not for retaliation. I don't think that's what we want.
I might just say that, I do think you raise a good point about free speech, freedom to disagree, and not wanting to chill speech. I'm just not as concerned that this will, because if you look at the disciplinary actions, they're really, 2 out of 3 of them are really just more speech. Certainly that's what an admonition is. It's the council speaking as a body. An informal reprimand is as well, direction is as well. The only time you finally get to doing anything is censure, when you have to meet that higher, clear and convincing standard. And whereas you may be troubled by the connection to evidence, that's how our entire judicial system works. The judge doesn't go in and say, so excuse me, in this civil case with the clear and convincing evidence standard, I need to understand your reasoning. It just doesn't happen. And here, though, unlike there, we have an entire public that's going to be watching us and holding us accountable for what we're doing. And I think that, with the censure, as you pointed out earlier, where that's the only one where you can actually do some things, they're pretty minor. Committee assignments, travel. So I'm not concerned this would chill speech. I think you're right to raise that. That's something we have to be careful about. But I just don't share the degree of concern.
Okay, well, we could agree to disagree here, at least today. I think the part that I think the difference here is the parties deciding are not independent. So if, like, again, it was a judge and the judge asked, do you know any of the parties in the courtroom, the plaintiff or defendant? If they do, they have to recuse themselves. They can't have a stake in what's happening. And same thing with the jurors. It can't be, the jurors knowing someone or having a stake in the outcome. But the problem here is the 7 council members voting all have a stake in the outcome. And so that's why it becomes political. And that's why, there's not the same evidentiary standard. We have interested parties making decisions versus in a traditional judicial process. The people involved making the decisions cannot be involved. And that's kind of like where I'm coming from. But we kind of talked about all this and we could agree to disagree on this. So maybe why don't you keep going?
Nearly done. So after the first part of paragraph D, then there's 1, 2, and 3. And these are, again, going back to the initial definitions, which we've now renamed types of disciplinary action. This is, again, recapping that these are choices that council has. I would offer that some of this seems a little repetitious to me. And so if the committee also feels that way, I think we can safely delete some of this language, which repeats some of the earlier language. There is some new material under the paragraph 3 resolution of censure. That's where the clear and convincing standard is mentioned. So that needs to stay or else be moved earlier. And that concludes my comments.
Do my colleagues have any comments about the last section, the city attorney review?
So as not to disappoint, I do have one. So in 2, last sentence, council may include direction to the subject council member or members to correct the result of the particular behavior that violated law or city policy. I think we may want to say to correct the behavior or the result of the particular behavior, because if the behavior is, inappropriate speech, I don't know exactly how they correct the result of it, but we want them to correct their chronic behavior.
Very well. Change can be made.
So that's all I have.
That was a very good one to finish on. That was I really like that suggestion. I missed that one, and I have no other comments.
Okay, city attorney, I think you mentioned earlier that I had a question about, we kind of talked about it, but maybe I missed it, where it was in the later section about a clear violation or beyond reasonable doubt. And you mentioned that there would be language in the section later, and was it D2?
It's in 2 places. So in D, it had the supermajority requirement. It seems like the committee is now choosing to go back to a majority of council. And then in D3, it has based on clear and convincing facts. And that is a standard that is greater than the minimum standard in our system, which is preponderance of the evidence, which is anything more than 50%.
Okay, but like we just talked about, there's nothing to, because in the end, this is people's interested parties' opinion. There's no way to hold this to clear and convincing. Is there, or am I missing?
I don't know how to answer your question,
Okay,
Councilman.
so the answer is no, but okay. It's a subject of standard, but it's not like, so let's say it wasn't clear and convincing. Let's say in my, contrived example of a green sky. What's the procedure to get that overturned? There is none, is there?
But I think that would be the case for beyond a reasonable doubt too. I mean.
Well, I know,
the
that's my whole
problem.
point. That's why I'm arguing that it should be a fairly large number of votes because of the fact that it just become very political. And, to be honest, I'm done next year. So it's not likely not to affect me. It's likely to affect you guys who are just starting out here. So just keep that in mind, guys. So, yeah, but anyways, yeah, but I'm, as a person who plans to live here, I don't want council to become, political or just become a political tool that colleagues use to attack each other. I just think that's a bad situation. And that's what I'm worried about is that this can be used as such a tool because it is interested parties and there is no way to hold this to a clear, convincing fact. So
Committee members, if I could suggest an order of work. So I have taken down the minor edits and the notes. It appears based on what I'm hearing that there's possibly a 2-1 on this policy. You could take that vote and forward this to council. It would be on action. And then you would see the final non-red line version with the additional minor changes you made tonight when it goes to council and it'd be for discussion. Alternatively, you could ask for it to come back to this committee again. Kind of seems like we're there and that we don't need to do that, but that is to your discretion.
Yeah, I'd like to move the staff motion with the changes we made and return to the word majority there.
okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Okay, do you want to speak to your motion or second?
No, I think this is a very well-informed draft that does not need to go back again. And I think I'm really comfortable presenting this to our colleagues.
And for context, my intention as staff is to take all of the referrals that you have taken action on to council at one time. So this would be one of them and it would be on action. So you would be able to talk about censure and the other, maybe 3 or 4 that you've actually recommended language on.
Are we at that point that you would take them all now, or are we missing anything?
I thought we have international travel still.
Well, we're going to do that tonight.
Yeah, we'll take all of them that are ready. I believe you have
Okay.
gone through the list. So the only one that there wasn't a landed specific suggestion on was about the annual reorganization of the council, but your decision was to have that discussion again at the council. So I'll bring that together so that you have that as a committee to know where you are as a whole, but you have enough things to take to council.
Okay, great.
And I just wanted to thank the chair for his comments, Karen, concern about this being something that is not a political tool, and that I do respect and appreciate that it's very unlikely to come up during your tenure, because hopefully it won't come up during mine, but that it is certainly something that I would live with longer. And I think it is appropriate to take all due care. So thank you for that.
Okay, does the clerk want to take the vote? Oh, actually, do you want to put the motion on the screen and then we can take the vote? Just want, as the clerk does that, we have, I guess, the travel and it's 10:10 now. Do you guys want to try to maybe do this tonight, or should we try to do it maybe next time around? How do you guys feel?
I'm willing to push through it.
Okay, is staff okay too? Okay, so clerk, whenever you have it up, we could take the vote.
Madam Clerk, the motion is move the staff recommendation with the changes discussed by the committee.
Chair Tanaka,
No,
Councilmember Lowing,
Yes.
Councilmember Vinker,
Yes.
motion carries 2-1.
Okay, so let's move on to international travel. I know it's super late. Is there anyone on any public speakers that want to say anything on international travel? No? Okay, so staff want to kind of walk through the international travel. And can staff put it on screen while we go through it?
Yes, this is packet page 29, and this one is much shorter than the censure policy. So the intention here is to add this on to the travel section of your procedures and protocols handbook. Just as a reminder for the committee, we essentially, in the council action earlier this year, said that the city council would abide by the citywide travel policy. And we listed a couple extra things that were unique to the council and boards and commissions. And so the intention of this international travel section is to add this it's about 2 or 3 paragraphs to that existing travel section in your procedures and protocols. So I'll just briefly go through it. This is again on packet page 29. The highlighted text, which if yours is printed in black and white, it should still show some sort of a highlight, is the language that we put in based off of the specific clauses this committee identified during our discussion in April. So we started off just an overview, given the council's or the city's relationship with sister cities and a sibling city, there may be a need to send Palo Alto delegation to another city abroad or within the US. And so then going into the next paragraph, let's see. We have the proposed travel must include an approved pre-travel authorization request for travel that explains how the travel will advance the city's interest or policy and council objectives, and a consideration of the cost/value relationship of the trip. The request should also explain why virtual attendance is not effective in that circumstance. The council will be reasonable in ensuring that visits to any one city will be reasonably spaced apart. And then the pre-travel authorization request will be approved by the mayor. And the committee last time did not specifically state who would approve it if it was the mayor's travel. So I just have sort of a line there of who would approve the request for the mayor's travel. Then the next paragraph is on funding. Annually, the total amount the city council will budget for international and domestic travel related to sister city, sibling city, or shared interest between Palo Alto and another city abroad will be capped at $40,000. This fund will be distributed equitably among city council members. So that is the proposed text. Related to the $40,000, I did want to flag for this committee, that money could be, and we put this in the resource impact section of the staff report, that could be funding that is redirected from the council contingency or any other existing pot of money that you already have, or that can be a net new $40,000. So that is a clarification that I think would be helpful for this committee to let the city council know which one you're recommending. And that's it.
Okay, do my colleagues have any thoughts, questions about this section?
Yeah, I have one that's this overall one. You referenced the fact that this is for Palo Alto and another city abroad, or shared interest with another city abroad. I don't think it was meant to be exclusive, but it might not be, something might be associated with a conference or content that happens to be in X, Y, or Z city. So it's not the relationship with the city, but if there's a climate, important international climate summit that we need to go to in France this year and Germany next year, do we feel like this language captures that? I mean, there's such reference to sibling cities, and I wouldn't want a reader to think that it was only allocated to that.
I think it would be worth explicitly stating that, or something to the effect. I know we have broad language on here of shared interest between Palo Alto and another city abroad, but it doesn't specifically speak to that type of summit idea that you're thinking about.
Yeah, the objective for being in a country may not be for the relationship with that city.
With
They
the
may be
country.
hosting
Yeah.
something that would be of importance.
Yes, I think we can call that out specifically. I am thinking about the city council's funding for travel in general. So that's also why I'm a little hesitant, because I don't know if your general conference travel covers that or not, but I can check against those two. Does that make sense?
Just so there's clarity sometime in the future, if this comes up, that people don't look at this and say that only covers sibling city or other city relationships.
Committee member, do you have any thoughts, comments, questions?
Yes. I have a typo. I know you were waiting. So, yes, I passed at least one test. So at the end of the first paragraph, under the travel related to sister cities, et cetera, so down toward the bottom where it starts with given the city's relationship. The last line, it says 6 total tips cap described above. And I think we mean trips. Okay, that's my big contribution. My second is just a question. At the end of the next paragraph, it says the mayor is the requested traveler. The request will be approved by blank. Should we fill in that blank and should it be the vice mayor?
I left it as a blank so that you all can provide your recommendation.
That's my thought. I don't feel strongly if someone has a different view, but let me just make one other comment while I'm here. On that $40,000, that's meant to be annual, right? It's not just a one-time thing. So then I would say is adjusted according to CPI or something like that, so that we don't 10 years from now go, that's a lot smaller. So those are my 3 things. So I don't know, I would recommend the vice mayor because I don't think this is a hugely controversial thing.
Comments on that?
I think that makes sense. I mean, anything that needs to be delegated usually goes to the vice mayor from the mayor anyway, so I'd be surprised if it wasn't somehow covered somewhere else.
Okay, hey, do you guys have any other comments, thoughts on this? Okay, so to the first point, who should be approved by? Vice mayor seems reasonable to me, or the majority of council. We want to really have a high standard. But I could also see that being on consent. Let's see. Yeah, I saw the annually, but I think the sentence begins with annually at the very beginning. So I thought that meant annually already, but maybe I'm mistaken.
It's a CPI thing.
Oh, I see the CPI thing. Okay. Okay. And, I guess the thing that I'm just thinking about is, I think staff talked about this, that this could come from, I don't see it in here, but I think you said this could come from the council contingency or something like that. Is that what you were saying?
In the fiscal impact section of the staff report, let me give you the page number, just one moment. In case you wanted to scroll to it, packet page 23.
Mhm.
We have on here, the international travel policy could have a impact of $40,000, but in the FY24 budget, the council included a city council travel meetings, in-person conferences and events budget of $35,000. And then annually, the council has the contingency of $125. So as currently discussed, the proposed $40,000 sounds like it is in addition to both of those, but this committee could make another recommendation of using any of the existing pot of money.
Okay. So exactly, how did we get to 40K? Why wasn't it 35K?
You all had very robust discussion and
Okay.
picked 40. That's the long, short description.
Okay. I don't remember what I voted on this. Can you remind me?
I think you were
Okay.
maybe a different voice on the number,
Okay,
but
okay, so
40 is what the committee as a whole
okay. Well, I
decided.
disagree on that still. So, okay. Okay. So, does anyone here want to make a motion?
I'll move that we recommend to council the international travel policy set forth in the staff report with the inclusion of the requests for mayoral travel being approved by the vice mayor.
Okay.
And that the annual amount will be adjusted according to adjusted annually according to CPI.
Okay. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay. Do you guys want to speak to your motion?
No, thank you.
Seconder?
No, we did have a robust discussion last time on this.
Okay. And the city clerk put it on the screen, and while I do that, I will not be supporting this. We're a city, our responsibilities belong to the city boundaries. I think Zoom is really good these days. It causes also less carbon footprint. I think we want to be wise with this people's money. And I think if we really want to go travel international or to other cities, choose our own money, our own pocket money, our own personal money, not the people's money. So I can't see us justifying this to the people, especially when we run a deficit in the city and taking money out of budget stabilization reserve, and our expenses are going up double digit and our revenue's dropping. Just not a good situation. So I don't think this is a good look. I don't think we should do it, but I'm outvoted probably. So why don't you go ahead and take the vote?
Is this a net new 40,000? Just to clarify, if you wanted that in the motion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Second, you agree? Yeah. Okay, please take the vote.
Councilmember Lowing,
Yes.
Councilmember Vinker,
Yes.
Chair Tanaka,
No.
motion carries 2-1.
Okay, so I think we're just about done here. The last item on our agenda is future meetings and agendas. The staff want to talk a little bit about potential future meetings and agenda.
Yes, between November and December, there are quite a few items for the committee, discussing your annual discussion on procedures and protocols handbook, where we solicit ideas that you may have. I know we've talked about the handbook all year, so it's crazy to think we're doing that, but there's more. Looking at the council discretionary expenditures, that's the last referral that you have related to the handbook that you have not yet discussed, related to if individual council members could use any of the funding. Updating your, the priorities is another one, thinking about the 2024 priorities, the legislative guidelines, and a few items related to audits. So there are quite a few items. We will try to spread them out, and I'll work with the chairperson if the agendas are looking too full.
Okay, do my colleagues have any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns about the upcoming agendas? Anything that we should try to do better? Anything that, I know we're going like seriously overtime tonight, but suggestions, thoughts?
What's the direction on the 24 objectives?
The 24 council priorities.
Yeah, priorities, sorry.
Annually, this committee has an opportunity to have a discussion around the 2024 priorities before it goes to the full city council at the retreat.
But we are talking about 2024, right? So with a month left in the year, we're going to talk about 2024. Is that to set up the 25 discussion?
It's a pre-discussion before the city council retreat on the 2024 priorities. So
Okay.
it's typically we have a conversation, and Mr. Shikata, feel free to jump in, but typically we have a opportunity to get information from city council members around the 2024 priorities, and we bring that to this committee, and that is precursor conversation to the city council retreat
Okay.
in late January, early February.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. There's a procedure in your procedures and protocols that says that process happens.
Okay, so guys, thank you guys for powering through the meeting. Appreciate it, staff's work. Have a good night. Bye.